Morning, everyone. Luis, can we check if you have a quorum, please?
District 1 Supervisor Alejo.
Yeah.
Linda Gonzalez, alternate.
District 2 Supervisor Church.
Here.
District 3 Supervisor Lopez. District 4 Supervisor Supervisor Askew. District 5 Supervisor Daniel. City of Carmel by the Sea.
Here.
City of Delray Oaks. City of Gonzalez.
Here.
City of Greenfield. City of King City.
Present.
City of Marina.
Here.
City of Monterey.
Present.
City of Pacific Grove.
Here.
City of Salinas. City of Sand City. City of Seaside.
Here.
City of Soledad. Ambag. Here. Caltrans District 5. Monterey Bay Air Resource District.
David Frisbee in for Rich Stedman.
Monterey Regional Airport District. Monterey Salinas Transit. City of Watsonville. CSUMB. We do have a quorum.
Thank you, Luis. May I ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Our next order of the day is public comments. I believe we have somebody from over here in the room. Mr. Duros. Bill Duros, please. Thank you. Sir, can you speak into the mic, please? Thank you. I know.
Oh, it's not on.
Thank you.
I'm not starting over. But I can reset that. Normally that's not an issue for me that folks can't hear me. But what I was gonna say is I can come up with lots of different ideas and suggestions and ways to do it as a citizen, but I know experts like TAMC and the transportation planners and staff here at the city of Monterey, the city of Carmel, the county of Monterey can all find solutions here. And I ask that you make that a priority for this year. Thank you.
Thank you. And I must say, Pacific Grove is sandwiched between both, and I live in PG. We'll certainly look into that. Thank you.
So you'd be a beneficiary too, and on, right? Delray Oaks and either all the way out here to Salinas. Thank you.
Any other comments from the room? If not, can we check in to see if we have any online comments? No. Seeing none, I close public comments. So I'll move on to the consent agenda. Does anybody wish to pull any item from the consent agenda? You? Ms. Velasquez, which item is it?
Yes, if I can pull item 3.1.4 and 3.3.1
I got 3.1.4. What is the other one?
and 3.3.1.
3.3.1. Okay. Anyone else? Yes.
Would like to discuss 3.3.1, but specifically item 4 under that.
Got it. Anyone else wish to pull any item? Okay, if not, let's just hear 3.1.4 first. It's the contract for the Office of County Council. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. And my question on that is just only because there's an open-ended contract. So, I mean, there's not a termination to that contract. So I just want to make sure that that's in alignment with our procurement policies for these type of professional agreements. That there is no end date to this contract. And just wanted to ensure that we've had these contracts with no end dates in the past.
Todd, can you make a comment on that, please?
We don't normally, actually, we don't have any other contracts without end dates, but this is a government to government contract, so the procurement situation is different than a government to private contract. But if Shane wants to add to that, please ask him to.
In my capacity as counsel for TAMC, it's probably in the entity's best interest to have a termination. As you suggested, is best practice. Uniquely, the Office of County Council, who drafts these agreements, we don't normally have termination clauses. It's normally if the relationship sours, we'll go ahead and end it then. But it's really at the body's prerogative. Either is a reasonable suggestion.
Thank you. And I think my only concern with that, I know the obviously county legal counsel represents a lot of other clients as well. So I think just, some oversight on that and making sure, obviously, if you guys are handling if there's any conflicts of interest and when the, county counsel will be removed and we have other counsel. But it was a little strange for me because typically we see, even if it's an end date and you can come back and there's, ability to renew it or to amend. But at least in my practice, it's always been there's an end date to a contract. I would recommend there would be an end date.
Okay, I'm going to note that down to review from a staff perspective. I can certainly say that in the past, I don't know if it was because of the open-ended or closed-ended, open-ended nature of the contract, but we've been able to switch counsel. And I think that's an advantage. I think that at least this contract presents us, but I'll have the staff review it. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 3.3.1, the legislative update. Ms. Velasquez, you have the floor, so why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for bringing this to our attention. My question is more in reference of the state legislative priorities. And there is one specific item, which is on 7S, which is critical. Obviously, we want to support the promotion of telecommuting to reduce vehicles miles traveled via broadband investments in rural areas and disadvantaged communities. We all know, especially in our rural areas, that's really critical. But there's also a language that includes support new server farms in rural areas. So for me, it's just wanted to ensure, why was that added? How does this align with our key goals related to transportation? There's obviously key goals that we've listed under the funding stability and flexibility, safety enhancements, climate sustainability, local control and revenue options. So I'm a little concerned in terms of specifically calling out a facility data center that is not really transit related. I'm not saying anything about data centers. Obviously, there's a lot of positives. But I think for us as a board, it's more, we're transit related. So I'm just a little concerned of how that aligns with our mission and advancing TAMC's, transportation goals. I know that when I reviewed the federal legislative priorities, there's potential to be able to use some similar language that's used on the federal priorities, that we can include support increased broadband infrastructure capacity to help bridge the digital divide, which is what's included in the federal priority. So I'm just a little, if I can get a little insight into why we're calling out a specific project or a specific type of infrastructure.
And before we get there, Mayor LaBar, did you have a comment?
Yeah, this is something that I've actually brought up through this process. And the reasoning is because one of the goals of TAMC is obviously reducing congestion within our transportation areas. And the broadband inclusion would allow the ability where traditionally server farms, data centers have been built in larger areas where they have the connection and the speed necessary. Those would be job creators where people could live within the communities. The specific language, I understand why it may not make sense, but from my point of view, it was that we need to have other people see and have the flexibility when we're advocating for state resources to show that it's not broadband and transportation are becoming intrinsically tied together, because where broadband goes, the ability for companies to now access those high speeds that are necessary, it means they can relocate to places where lower cost is living and create jobs within our smaller communities. So the data centers are tied to the broadband portion. And so that's why I felt that I wanted to see more specific language on that so that there could be an example of how those things can work. And data centers are something you cannot have unless you have that broadband, and you have to have the speeds. And so those are good for all of our small communities.
Thank you, Director Labar, and I appreciate that. I think for me, though, it also goes back to local control. So I think although data centers, and like I said, I'm not saying anything negative about data centers, because I know obviously there's a lot of positives about it. But I think just in terms of this board, obviously some of the language at the beginning is good, but I think calling out a specific infrastructure instead of open-ended to be able to say, look, it's inclusive. Maybe we just leave it at the infrastructure, and it can include data servers, and it could include others as well. But I think when you put a specific item on it, I mean, there's still a lot of other items that need to be considered at the local level in terms of where those data centers are going to be located. And I think for a lot of us that live in the rural communities, that's a lot of the local policies that we need to go through and local control. So I think for this board, it just seemed a little bit, to me, at least, that we could do it in the coverage of, the way we have it under the federal support increased broadband infrastructure capacity to help bridge the digital divide. That could cover anything else. Others, that's my comments and my recommendation.
Thank you. If I could make one.
Please go ahead.
I do hope the board considers keeping it in. And the reason why it's important to have specific call outs, those are examples so our legislators can understand what the meaning of that is and what the impact is. Those things, when we leave the federal language like it is, that's fine. But for our state ledge people, having something where they can understand the connection is more important. And so that's why I hope that we can keep it in. But thank you, Chair.
Okay, can I ask a question? Which particular line item was this again that you were referring to?
It's on 7S, S as in Sam. And it's the last
Okay.
sentence on that one. And I think if we're gonna, sorry, Chair.
Yeah, I think we've vetted this process a little bit, but Todd, is there room for us to further review this as we move along?
The board normally adopts these policies annually, but there's always room to modify the policies. So it can come back for further review and modification at whatever time the board wishes.
Okay. Can I suggest, Ms. Velasquez, if you don't mind, to provide some feedback related to 7S. What kind of language do you want to incorporate in there? And perhaps we can bring it back to the board at a future meeting, something which everybody has a chance to review and kind of include. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Sajorek, you had a comment too. Please go ahead.
My comments are really just related to number 4, the Taliban consensus principle for reauthorization of the transportation multi-year reauthorization bill as far as policy and funding goals for 5 or 6 years. That ostensibly will come due October 1st, like this year, not likely will go well into the next year, as is generally the case. However, I just wanted to state from the transit operators' perspective in California.
I'm sorry, Mr. Sajorek, but it looks like your speaker is not on. Thank you.
That is because at MST, we always have our mics on, and I have to get used to this location. Thank you. My comments are related to the federal reauthorization consensus presented by Caltrans. Just wanted to say that there is a lack of consensus on this consensus, particularly from the public transit operators' perspective. A number of issues we have been talking to CalSTA and to CalCog. There will likely be some revisions coming later based on these discussions related to increased formalization that is being called for, which generally disadvantages smaller, more rural agencies. And there are also issues related to increased block grant activity, which may work well in this state under this existing administration, but we don't know what future administrations hold and what other states might do with that. It may have impact on our vendors. We have had discussions with CalSTA and with CalCog. It is likely that there will be revisions coming forward from CalSTA and Caltrans with regard to these draft principles. I just wanted you to be aware of that. I'm not telling you not to take a position at this point, but just in doing so, know that there may be changes coming based on conversations that were as recent as yesterday afternoon.
Thank you. Any additional comment on this matter?
Add to it.
Go ahead.
I would recommend that we withhold action on this, on item 4. We heard MST's concerns after we published the agenda, and it's a different interpretation of how we read the issue, but certainly we want to make sure that we're consistent with our transit partners. So if we could take action on this item, but withholding action on take action on 3.3.1, except item 4, which is the federal reauthorization policies, that would be my recommendation. And we can bring it back next month after this has been resolved.
That would be ideal, but given my late notice on this, I'm not asking you to do that, but I appreciate it if you do.
Okay, the item right now is 3.3.1, and we're going to essentially move forward with all items 1, 2, and 3 underneath that, except for 4, which will come back at a future date. Is anybody in support of that decision?
Motion to approve the consent.
Okay,
Motion to approve the consent except for 3.3.1, item 4.
And I'll second that.
thank you. Do we have any public comment? I'm closing public comment. Do we have any further comments on this matter?
I was just looking for clarification as it relates to the state legislative program. Are we adopting as presented with suggested changes coming back, or are we not adopting 7S as part of the program?
We're adopting 7 as is. We're going to review the language that Ms. Velasquez will provide at a future date, and we'll revise 7 as the case may be at a future time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have a roll call vote, please? Thanks. Do we need a, okay.
Good question, though.
Okay, all in favor, then say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Aye.
Okay, everyone except Ms. Velasquez. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item number 4. This is a presentation of the Transportation Agency Employee of the Quarter to Mr. Matt Sheehan.
Thank you. It's my honor to present this Employee of the Quarter certificate to Matt Sheehan. I'll read it for you. It's hereby certified that Matt Sheehan, Accounting Assistant, has been selected by his colleagues as the Transportation Agency for Monterey County as the Employee of the Quarter for October 1st through December 31st, 2025. The agency employees recognize Matt for his professionalism, tenacity, steady and trusted presence, and positive service-oriented approach in supporting staff. Most notably, he strengthened the Finance Department's electronic document management system by advancing standardization, and he contributes to special projects by applying thorough and thoughtful research. On behalf of the Board of Directors and staff of the Transportation Agency for Monterey County, it is our great pleasure to recognize Matt Sheehan for his exemplary service.
Thank you, Todd. Anybody else, anybody wish to make a comment? If not, we'll move on to item 5. Item 5 is election of the officers. And so we're going to receive a report from the nominating committee to elect the chair, first vice chair, and second vice chair of the board for the next year. Mr. Lepar, I believe you're a part of the nominating committee.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So Supervisor Eskew and I met via phone. And as you see in the recommendation within the agenda, we kept with the tradition of making sure that we have representation moving back and forth, and not only regionally, but also between city representatives as well as county representatives. And we are very comfortable with this recommendation to place before the board of moving everyone up that currently is on the executive committee up to the next level, and then bringing in the city representative of Mayor Donahue representing Salinas.
Thank you. Anybody wish to comment on this matter within the chambers? Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you to the committee for bringing this up. I just want to make a couple of comments in terms of the process, and I don't have the last 5 years of how this process has worked, but I think it's important to be able to look at establishing a process that really has diversity, gender equity, and some, maybe looking at rotation, diversity in terms of some of the rotation as well. And I know that there was discussion in terms of the city representative, county representative, and no disrespect to Mayor Donahue. Thank you for representing the city of Salinas. But I know there's other city representatives that have been here sitting on this board for quite some time. And Mayor Donahue, this is your second or third meeting here on the board, and I don't want to be disrespectful, but I think it has to be when we make these decisions at the executive level to come to the board, I think there has to be a level of transparency of how the board is really selecting the people that are on the executive committee. So I really would ask this board to look at its transparency policies and looking at a rotation. So that way there is a fair and equitable process as how the executive committee is being selected. So there's equal representation amongst all the cities in the county.
Duly noted. Any other comments? Please go ahead.
Yeah, I would be interested in knowing just, I thought maybe there was a rotation going forth, that it just, people rolled on from each city or the supervisorial selections were, happening in numerical fashion in some way, but, can we get an explanation just on how that's selected, or is it selected somewhat arbitrarily by the nominating committee?
We have the nominating committee here. Perhaps you can explain. Thank you.
So I've been on TAMC for about 10 years or more now, and the way it has worked in the past, so we have our current executive committee. It has already been rotated back and forth between Peninsula and the Valley, and additionally ensuring that the county representative is brought into that as we move people up. So this last cycle, we had Supervisor Askew as chair. And so that meant the vice chair would have needed to been a city representative. So we're not only going regionally back and forth, we're also going county rep to city rep back and forth for each cycle. And on this cycle, the last rep would have been from the Peninsula side, so the vacancy would need to be filled from someone on the Valley side. I had already served, Mayor Rios is already in that mix in the executive committee. The decision amongst the nomination committee, which was under our prerogative, was we chose that Dennis Donahue would be that person. This one, I'm sorry, this one would have had somebody on the Peninsula side filling the city vacancy. I made a mistake. I apologize for that. Salinas has always served the role of either or because of their proximity. And that's where that pick. And I should have had that laid out the process. And I do apologize for that.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I guess I'm looking a little bit more granular than that. I'm covered 3 years on this, so I'm still just, several of us probably don't have the length of time that you've had on here. So, I mean, I know that when I came on, and this is the way I was sort of visualizing it, and now I'm seeing it's not the case. When I came on, I think Supervisor Lopez was chair. And then we switched off, and then it was Supervisor Askew. And I just sort of saw, well, we had District 3, Supervisor Lopez, District 4, Supervisor Askew. And I thought, that there was maybe people coming on the committee and the same thing was happening on the city side, is that it was more of a rotation where everybody swings through. But as I'm understanding from the selection of the executive committee, that isn't necessarily how people are selected that way.
Correct. And I can't speak for Supervisor Askew, but on our consideration, she had indicated she'd be reaching out. There was a couple people that we considered. She was going to reach out to them. And then this was the final pick. And I believe with the back-to-back on supervisors, it's because we had the city mayor was in that position, and was that Dave Potter? And so instead of putting someone just brand new as the chair, the decision was made just to move everybody up and then backfill. And so that was a unique situation. I don't think that's happened since I've been here.
And Todd, looks like, did you want to comment anything further?
I was just going to point out that that's why we deviated from the city-county alternating between cities and counties, was because of Mayor Potter not winning reelection. And the nominating committees followed this process of rotating back and forth between around the county. And there have been other situations where they look out ahead. Obviously, this is a role where people are expected to move up, and they need to be willing to commit for that period to be on the executive committee. And there's occasion where people know they're not going to run in years out or something where they step back. So there's been other times in the past where we've deviated from that just because of situation.
Thanks.
Yes, go ahead.
I've never known how the process worked. I never looked into it, but I've been on this board since 2008 and I've never been asked to serve on the executive council. So that's why I was confused at how it works.
Thank you. Any further comment? Yes, go ahead, Mr. Swan.
Yeah, I appreciate the comments and the concern, which really represents the passion that you all serve your communities and also for contributing to this board. The one fact that hasn't been mentioned until the end when the last conversation was about the elections. So that also plays a factor in the elections. And I am a past chair member and worked through the levels and then dropped off and was a past president as well, or past chair. So from a peninsula representation piece, I think it's important, but I'm okay with this lineup because Wendy is on the peninsula and she has, she's holding on to the past chair position, but she's part of the peninsula. I think it's important to also look to our big partners, and I think having Salinas represented to be on the board is an important factor. And he may elevate to advance to be chair, and he may not. It depends on what his interests are. But I think this gives us options every year. But also, I think it's important that we all write something down and make an effort to reach out to the nominating committee to say, I am interested. I think that's an obligation that's on us to be able to communicate to the nominating group. So if you've never been asked, I think that needs to be elevated with your own ask and sending an email to the nominating committee to make sure that you're considered for future positions. And that's just my comments. Thank you, Chair.
Let me, if I could.
Yes, please.
I thank you. I think the process, excellent process. We always been rotating, so it's been a good process. That was the thing is Mayor Potter, step back, right? That's the only reason why the two. So we see that it's going to rotate between the county and the supervisors, and then you had to pick some cities on the peninsula, some cities in the valley, so to speak. And I'm fine with the rotation, but I do think the nomination committee should be asking those that have not served. That's what you guys should be looking for, is how do people, just don't pass them by. And I don't think, I think we should be reaching out. And so with that, I support the motion or the recommendation, but I do think the next go around, as you go through the so-called, not so-called, but the valley cities, I think Mayor Vasquez should be spoken to about her concepts about getting into the line of service. And there's other people on the peninsula that should be talked about in the line of service. And I'm not saying call me, right? But that's the fairness of it, right? Because if you think about it, if it rotates 5 county, 5 cities, that's 10 years before the other 7 cities even get a chance. If that makes sense, right? And so that's 10 years. So you may have to serve, if you get here at the wrong time, you may have to serve 10, 12, 15 years before it basically comes back to you because no one else, they rotate between everyone else. And luckily it is a couple, maybe people that are too busy that can't serve. And so, but I do think we should figure out a way to at least ask people what are their thoughts about serving. But I thank you. Where is he at down there? Where is he at?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to say that, like, thank you for the comments. I think it's duly noted. One of the things that I've always realized is it's a two-part thing. Do you want to serve, number one, in this executive committee, et cetera? Do you have the time to do it and the commitment to do it? And then are you expressing yourself to serve? So I think duly noted on the comments. We'll certainly see if we can make this process better. But for now, we'll take a, what looks like roll call vote then. A public comment first.
Don't need a roll call.
Anybody online? All right, thank you. Then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Thank you. The motion passed. We'll move on to item number 6, which is the draft 2026 RTP public hearing. Mr. Mike Zeller.
Yes, good morning, Chair and members of the board. I'm Mike Zeller. I'm TAMC's Director of Programming and Project Delivery. I'll be presenting our draft 2026 Regional Transportation Plan and then asking the board to conduct a public hearing at the close of the presentation. Okay. So the Regional Transportation Plan, this is updated every 4 years. So the last document was approved by the board in 2022. So this next update looks out to the year 2050. So what do we think that our transportation network is going to need to look like to accommodate what the growth and the changing dynamics in the county are going to be over that long-term horizon? The document is also the basis for state and federal funding. So typically, if a jurisdiction is looking at going after grant funding for one of their projects, or typically a requirement is that the project is included in the regional transportation plan. So we work closely with all the jurisdictions through this update process. Sorry. So we work closely with the jurisdictions through this update process to make sure that we are incorporating changes to projects, deleting projects that have been completed or not moving forward, or adding new projects that the jurisdictions are focused on. There's also a key regional collaboration. We work closely with AMBAG on the preparation of their Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which is encompasses the Santa Cruz, San Benito, and Monterey counties regional transportation plans, and we coordinate closely with the other counties as well during this process to update the documents and then to do a combined environmental impact report. Really why this matters is that the document aligns local projects with our regional goals for looking at safety, sustainability, and multimodal access. This does not approve any individual projects, but as I mentioned, it establishes eligibility to go after future funding. The document is made up of 3 primary elements. There is the policy element, the financial element, which is the budget with the revenues and expenditures, and then the action element, which is the projects. The board has previously approved all 3 of these pieces individually. We've brought them forward throughout 2024 and 2025 for the board to review, comment on, and approve. And now it's folded into the full Regional Transportation Plan document. So a little bit about each of these elements. The policy element sets out the goals, the objectives, and the performance measures. So identifies what we want to focus on for transportation improvements in the county over the long-term horizon. And it helps to focus the types of projects that we are including in the plan and advancing to help us meet our goals. Those goals are looking at access and mobility, so the reliability of the transportation network, safety and health, so making sure that the transportation network promotes safety and well-being of Monterey County residents, looks at environmental stewardship so that the projects that we're advancing also protect the natural environment. We look at social and geographic equity, as well as that the programs that we're putting forward, the projects and programs that we're putting forward support the Monterey County's economy. As far as the financial element, this plan includes 7.9 billion of real and potential revenues over the 2050 time horizon for Monterey County. The key thing to remember is that in the regional transportation plan, since we're looking out so far, there's certain assumptions that we make about potential revenues that we assume to be likely that we will receive. So seeing a $7.9 billion as the revenues, that's not all realized. That's what we reasonably expect to bring in, but there's certain grants and other funding that we still need to apply for and go for, so this number could change. But from what we are reasonably expecting to bring in over the time horizon to 2050, a significant portion of that is our local funds made up primarily of Measure X. We have some state funding looking at going after the Senate Bill 1 grant programs. And we also have 25% coming from federal. So this is primarily the federal transit funding that goes through to MST, but also looking at some other federal grant programs like the BUILD to help go after our regional priority projects. Another key point that I wanted to make about the revenues is that, as I'm sure as you're all aware, that certain colors of money come with certain restrictions. So seeing that we have $7.9 billion of estimated revenues, what we then have to do with those revenues is that match them up with the project list. So we have to make sure that the funds that we're identifying are actually eligible to be used on the projects that we are including. So we don't want to include too many projects from one type of category, such as highway, but not have enough revenues to cover that. So this chart is just showing that the work that we have to do kind of behind the scenes to match up the revenues with the projects, and that there really is just a small portion of the total amount that we would consider flexible, that we have some discretion as to where those funds go. Typically, funds are dedicated towards certain categories of project types. So running through the project list, I should have taken these animations out, apologies. The project list is segmented into two different types of categories. One is called the constrained list. So these are projects that we reasonably expect to be funded and completed over the 2050 year time horizon. We also include what we call an unconstrained list. So these are projects that either do not have committed funds or they're not likely to be done, completed in the 2050 time horizon. The reason that we include the unconstrained projects is that as I mentioned before, if funding were to become available that was not expected, you still want these projects listed to be able to identify them in the regional transportation plan and make them eligible for potential future funding. It also shows the big picture of what our transportation network really needs in terms of improvements, but is limited by the amount of revenues that we're able to bring in. So just looking at a few examples of projects that are on our regionally significant constrained list. So we have the State Route 218 corridor improvements. And then we also have our two Measure X projects, the State Route 68 corridor improvements and the US 101 South of Salinas improvements that are moving forward. We also have the rail extension to Monterey County that we expect to be completed during this time horizon. We have the King City roundabouts at US 101 and Broadway, as well as the Fort Ord Regional Trail and Greenway, which we have several segments moving forward currently and expecting to be able to complete the remainder of the project in the lifetime of the Regional Transportation Plan. A few examples of projects, regionally significant projects that are termed as unconstrained or that we do not have full identified funding for would be the State Route 1 improvements through North County, through Elkhorn Slough and Moss Landing. So we're currently going through a planning exercise right now to identify what those improvements would be. And then in future updates of the RTP, as I mentioned, that we update this every 4 years. Once we have projects identified and the funding identified, this is an example of a project that could then shift to the constrained list. Similarly, we have the Around the Bay Rail, as well as the State Route 1, Fremont, Monterey Road, and California Avenue intersection project. And for any of these projects that are on the unconstrained list, as we go through different updates and identify funding, these are ones that can then move forward to the constrained list. So for the brief timeline, so as I mentioned, the board has looked at the goals, the policy objectives, and the performance measures, as well as the financial element and the project list, which has all gone through all the local jurisdiction staff to review and provide feedback on as well. Today, we're looking at holding a public hearing. The board did release the draft regional transportation plan in December for public comment, and that public comment runs through the end of this month. And that is concurrent with AMBAG's public comment period on the Metropolitan Transportation Plan and the Environmental Impact Report. AMBAG has also conducted a series of workshops and public hearings on the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. There was also one with a focus on Monterey County, so we're taking comments through that process as well. But today for the board, we're asking for a public hearing at this meeting. After the close of the public comment period, we would then work with AMBAG to address any comments that we receive, update the document to reflect that, and then bring a final regional transportation plan back to the board in June for adoption, along with adoption of the environmental impact report. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions or request that the board open the public hearing.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions? Please go ahead.
When you showed the categories, rail and airport were the smallest recipients of money. And when you showed the constrained and unconstrained, I saw the Salinas rail project is constrained, it's going to be done. But recently there was a TAMC meeting held at the Salinas rail station, and there was some talk of trying to find ways to increase monies for rail, mainly for maintenance of their Salinas station. Anyway, how did that ever translate into this, where it is now a project in this 2026 RTP?
The rail extension to Salinas is included as a constrained project, so that we're anticipating that we'll have full funding to complete the project. The list that I showed with the different project categories and specific to rail is really kind of generalized. There are certain, as an example, certain highway funds that can also be used for active transportation types of projects as well, as long as it's something that's a part of a larger project. So showing just a small amount of rail, those are really just rail dedicated funds. So there is some flexibility that goes between those. So it's just kind of more illustrative of the restrictions that we have. So that's kind of explaining that chart. And then the rail extension project, as I mentioned, is on the constrained list. There are certain funds that we're expecting to be able to receive that may not completely be realized yet. So that's part of the conversation of how do we bring those funds in? How are we successful in going after different types of grants, like the state's transit and intercity rail capital program? That would be a key component to be able to complete those projects.
I guess my question is, there seemed to be some consensus that we could find more money to improve the appearance, the functionality of that station, apart from what's already planned. And then there was a side issue where the county was going to set up their process to look at the same thing. And I just didn't know whether this board ever had it on an agenda to decide if we were going to try to find increased funding for the Salinas station that we talked about at the meeting that we held at the station.
Okay.
And if that's part of this or separate.
I would say that that's separate, but I'll let.
Yeah, that's a good example of a project-specific discussion versus this bigger picture, regional long-range view of our transportation system. So each project has those discussions that roll up into this. And this is looking out to 2050. Some projects are much sooner, some are farther out. So when you're talking about specifically the station improvements in Salinas, we would, it's not really addressed in this other than it's included. We have to go through the process of identifying what types of changes or improvements to the station are desired. And then you kind of break that down into what are eligible fund types to fund it. Some of them might fall under transit, where we're talking about coordination between traveler information with the buses that arrive and the trains that arrive. And different funds are eligible for that than for painting the building, for example. So you have to break those individual projects down into what is being attempted to do, and then you go figure out how to fund those.
So because the rail station is one of the constrained larger projects, within that, at different points, we try to find funding for components.
Well, we're really getting into the weeds on this because TAMC and our role of our project is to bring additional rail service to Monterey County. And as in that capacity, we're looking to add a layover facility at the Salinas station. And included in that layover facility is an expansion of the boarding platform. That project doesn't include additional modifications to the historic train station and other things that were discussed at that meeting in the station. So really, that's a separate project that we need to identify additional funds for and determine whether it's a transportation issue or it's a city beautification issue or however we can figure out how to address it. Does that help?
Yeah, what I understand is that it's not part of the RTP, what we talked about that day.
It is in that there are a lot of categories that are kind of just grouped, what we call lumped sum projects, where it just covers a category. And once you identify a project, there's regionally significant projects that are named and listed, and then there's big grouped categories that are a collection of a lot of smaller projects. The station issue that we saw would fit into the smaller group list of projects. If it's a transportation improvement.
Not part of this.
It's included in it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Church?
Just on the plan here, where does 156 interchange float in?
Sorry, Mike. I didn't mean to jump over.
So the Castroville 156 interchange project, that is fully funded and moving towards construction. So I believe that would be on the constraint list. The other two segments, the 156 mainline widening and the US 101 156 interchange, are currently on the unconstrained list because they do not have full funding identified.
Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you. So just to clarify, you just said the US 101, South 101 is also on the constraint list, so it doesn't have full funding.
The US 101 South of Salinas project, that is included on the constraint list. So we're expecting that will be completed over the 2050 time horizon. What I mentioned for Supervisor Church was the 156 101 interchange, which is included as a separate project.
Okay. And I have a follow-up question, just really quickly, in terms of the rail, because if you can go back to the slide where we have the rail projects, I know there's been different discussions with this board in regards to the funding, the funding on the rail portion. And so I know the slide that you presented, there was the funding slide and discussions about the funding commitments for the rail projects. Obviously, we have some, but if we look at the restrictions on the fund sources, so those are the restrictions currently of the funding sources that TAMC has on for these projects, because I know there's been a lot of discussions on rail, and if the board obviously is a priority, then why is the funding portion so restricted and so small and limited, I should say?
It's primarily the funding programs that are available. We obviously look to bring in as much funding for different priority projects that we can. But as I mentioned, this is more of a kind of a bigger picture generalization of the different funding categories for the, where projects need to fall. So as an example, some of the what's identified as flexible funding that could be used towards rail projects as well. Something like the local streets and roads, some of that funding could be used for bike and pedestrian projects, so that would expand the active transportation. So this is just more illustrative of showing when we're trying to identify the projects that we include in the regional transportation plan. It's not just that we can include the full wish list of all of our projects. We have to line it up with broadly the types of funding categories that we have available in terms of revenues.
And based on some of the restrictions that we have.
Correct.
Any other questions? I just had a quick question. So it looks like this RTP at least still relies on federal funding as a major, at least a significant contributor to all the funds. So if that doesn't pan out for whatever reason, it's like any other project. We're going to look at sources of revenue outside of federal grants. Is that typically how we work?
Correct. The federal portion that's included here, as I mentioned, a lot of that is formula funds that are dedicated towards transit. So those come through the different transportation authorization bills. But there is also a certain amount that we look for federal grant programs as well. So if those do not materialize, we always look for other sources of funding as well. Typically, when we're looking at putting together a funding plan for a specific project, we'll identify a few different potential grant sources that we can apply towards. And sometimes with overlap in the funding that we would get from those programs, just to make sure that if we don't receive one, but we do receive another, that we have the flexibility to make sure that the project still stays funded.
Okay, thank you. And I don't know if you can answer this quickly, or maybe it's a quick answer, but has any federal funding stopped for any of these constrained projects to date?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, thank you. So we've opened up the public hearing, and let's see if there are any comments from either the room or from online. Anybody from the room wish to make a public comment? If not, anybody online wish to make a public comment on the draft RTP? We have Mr. Barry Jones. You have the floor. Mr. Jones, you have the floor.
Okay, got it. Congratulations on developing such an embracing plan for the region. As a UK chartered civil municipal engineer, I fully appreciate the huge amount of effort that is required to produce such a document. And truly, congratulations again. I'm pleased that the enormous amount of work that Dwight Stump and myself have indulged in over the past 2.5 years seems to be paying off. We campaigned to get yourselves, TAMC staff and Caltrans to consider the installation of AI adaptive traffic signals, rather than go headlong into constructing 9 roundabouts in 8 miles along the corridor, which is probably going to be 300 million. In several important sections of the RTP, our efforts have been rewarded by the inclusion of strong statements highlighting the adoption of AI traffic signals on 68 as an important step forward. I quote, "The adaptive signal operations will become the baseline when evaluating investments in future investments," on page 45. It's also heartwarming to see the adaptive pilot is also included on page 91 as part of the IT statements for the whole county, especially commitments to using the results as baseline when making future decisions with constructing roundabouts. So that's where the money comes in. Also, the safety figures for this section of the corridor on 68 are much lower than many other highways in the region and the state. I believe they are lower than the state average, and hence will probably not be influential when applying for grants, as you've just been hearing, a grant situation on the basis of a safety reduction. Witness the information provided in Regional Vision 0 on page 77. I would also note that on page 56, the section on roundabouts, I was wondering where the actual data relating to the SR68 supports a cost-effective strategy that's referred to in a paragraph relating to the ISO process. So thanks very much for the efforts. I think the other thing is I was listening to the transition of staff on the board, and I'd like to say that we've lost a lot of board members with history on 68, and perhaps in the next few months we could have some sort of session where 68 is really heralded and shown what's happened with it and where it is for the existing board members, because you've lost about 50% of the guys that were on there originally. Thanks very much. Sorry for overstepping.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments? Mr. Stump, please go ahead.
Good morning. Yeah, this is a huge project, so I'll just have a few comments here. One is that many in the public feel that there should be more than the 60% limit of Measure X funds be used for the huge backlog of street maintenance rather than new projects. So I was wondering if that could be changed as needs develop. More attention should also be placed on the cost benefits of proposed projects rather than some of the well-intended wishful thinking ones. Projects like SURF, I think, needed to have more measured research and goals so that current bus ridership can be compared to the end result. And if that's not attained, then the decision maker should be held responsible. Most of the public believe that the 6 miles of faster bus time will not achieve ridership goals based on current usage and logic. Also, the current Castroville 156 project will not really improve the initial goal of better commute, but will spend millions of dollars to remove just one signal and add 3 roundabouts that were not even part of the EIR and still not address the Oak Hill intersection that's very dangerous. The AI adaptive project, as Barry said, was very well described on page 45 and hopefully will be tested fairly. The roundabout promotion on page 56 had a number of false statements. Roundabouts on 68 have not proven to be a cost-effective strategy, with an alleged 5 minutes of peak PM commute time being the only benefit and costing $300 million while increasing the non-peak commute and emergency response times. Roundabouts are not friendly to bicyclists who have to merge in with much faster traffic instead of staying in bike lanes. There's a lot of needs and ideas in the RTP, and I hope that decisions will be made more on proven data and all options considered with cost benefit in mind and transparency with the results, so that decision makers can be held accountable for the public and we can move forward with good ideas implemented. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else wishing to make a public comment? Okay, I don't see anyone. Thank you. I do want to make a note that public comment for the RTP along with the AMBAG, it closes on January 30th, 2026. I encourage everybody to provide their comment. I have a motion on the floor to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please. Sorry, we'll just go with motion to approve and second. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Item number 7 is the gas tax replacement study session. Ms. Strauss?
All right, thank you. Let's make sure this works. Okay. Good morning, Chair Peduri and members of the board. My name is Yannicka Strauss. I'm a senior transportation planner with TAMC. And today we're going to be taking a closer look at one of the most important transportation funding questions that is facing our state, which is how to sustainably pay for our roads, highways, transit systems, where the traditional gas tax revenues are continuing to decline. We are also going to be looking at how the proposed funding mechanisms that are on the table right now impact Monterey County drivers. So today we're going to be asking the board to provide input on two funding mechanisms, vehicle registration fee or VRF and the road user charge or RUC. And we're going to be asking the board to either to give direction to staff on whether to wait for new legislation or to take a position on a proposed alternative. So as a reminder, in June 2025, Gus Corey, our TAMC's legislative analyst, provided a presentation on the vehicle registration fee. And in September 2025, Lauren Prahota from the Caltrans Road User Charge program presented on the road user charge proposal. And they are both here with us today in the room. So with that, here is our agenda. We're going to review the current transportation funding system, proposed the legislative proposals on the table and key issues that are driving those proposals. Then we will look at potential solutions for replacing the gas tax, how they would work, and their impacts to Monterey County drivers. So transportation in California is financed through a blend of federal, state, regional, and local funds. State excise taxes on gasoline and diesel represent the largest share of our transportation revenue and is projected to generate $80 billion over the next 10 years, or 46% of the total state transportation revenue. The gas tax pays for maintenance projects like filling potholes on our local roads or capital projects like the US 101 south of Salinas project. I'm not sure why the slide keeps doing this, but under that black box, it says that the state of California is facing a gas tax fiscal cliff with a potential $31 billion funding shortfall over the next 10 years. The decline in gas tax revenue is primarily due to a shrinking tax base. Electric vehicle drivers avoid gas taxes, reducing revenue as electric vehicle adoption increases. Gas-powered vehicles are also paying fewer taxes at the pump, with the industry as a whole manufacturing more fuel-efficient vehicles. Climate policies also incentivize reducing reliance on fossil fuels, further shrinking the tax base. Even with offset measures such as the zero-emission vehicle road improvement fee, a revenue gap still remains. Legislation directed a road charge technical advisory committee to develop a road user charge pilot program, which was completed in January of 2025, and we expect a report on the analysis of that pilot program this year. Assemblymember Wilson, who is the chair of the Transportation Committee, has proposed a spot bill for a gas tax replacement funding mechanism. And this bill will need to advance to the state Senate by January 31st in order to remain a placeholder for new legislation. So in December of 2023, the Legislative Analyst Office published a report recommending that the legislature study a replacement mechanism for the gas tax, and they proposed key issues that the legislature should consider when they're deciding on a proposed alternative. So the user pays principle asks, are the costs of maintaining and improving the state's transportation system paid by those who use and benefit from the system? Equity, how are the impacts distributed amongst various groups, such as by income level and or geography? Ease of implementation, how complicated would the option be to implement for the state and the public? And revenue stability and sustainability, are the additional revenues sustainable over the long run? In addition to the proposed considerations by the LAO report, staff put together a list of other considerations that this board might want to take when discussing a proposed alternative. Rural fairness. Does the solution disproportionately penalize drivers with longer commutes? Income fairness. Can the pricing structure be designed equitably so the fee rate is progressive? Privacy and trust. Does the solution present privacy concerns, such as with a location tracking device? Administrative cost. Does the solution require significant administrative costs to be implemented? Health and safety. Is the solution in alignment with state health, safety, and climate policies that support reducing vehicle miles traveled? And likelihood of adoption. How likely is the proposal to be adopted in our current political environment? So this LAO report also identified 4 broad categories of potential transportation infrastructure funding solutions. 1 category, reduce and reprioritize transportation spending. 2, shift transportation costs to other fund sources. 3, increase existing fuel taxes and vehicle fees. And 4, adopt new transportation-related charges. The first 2 options, reducing and reprioritizing transportation spending and shifting transportation costs to other fund sources, would be politically challenging because they would have a negative impact on our already aging transportation system, and they would require pulling funds from other state programs. So staff finds the 2 options listed here have the greatest potential based on the key considerations that I provided in the previous slides. Adopt a new road user charge or increase existing vehicle registration fees. So first, we will look at the new road user charge proposal. The primary goal of a funding replacement for the gas tax is that it generates roughly the same revenue that is currently being generated. These numbers have been slightly updated from the staff report to reflect the most recent proposal. So in the top table, you can see the revenue generated by the existing gas tax at a rate of 63 cents per gallon, excuse me. This table shows the average driver in California pays $301 per year, and the average Monterey County driver pays $354 per year. In the bottom table is the revenue generated by the proposed road user charge. Here you'll see that at a rate of 2.5 cents per mile, the average California driver would pay $291 per year, and the average Monterey County driver would pay $353 per year. As you can see in the state column here, both options would generate roughly the same amount of revenue. So how does the road user charger work? The road user charge is a fee based on the number of miles you drive. It's considered a sustainable revenue source because it's tied to vehicle miles traveled and will not diminish with the shift to zero emission vehicles. Drivers would be required to report the number of miles they drive. There are concerns over privacy if the reporting mechanism is a location tracking device, but it may be as simple as reporting the miles that you drive annually. You would likely pay a bill either online or mail. And with the new road user charge, as I showed in the previous slide, Monterey County drivers would on average pay more than the average driver because Monterey County drivers drive more annual miles. And this slide demonstrates how Monterey County drivers drive more miles than the state average. The statewide average for vehicle miles traveled per licensed driver is 11,634 miles. The counties in green are counties that drive fewer miles, and the counties in orange are the counties that drive more miles than the state average. And this table shows a mix of central coast counties, rural counties, and urban counties. And as you can see, the rural counties tend to have a higher average vehicle miles traveled than drivers because they tend to have a larger geographic area and fewer options, fewer alternatives to single occupancy gas-powered vehicles. So what is the vehicle registration fee proposal? This table shows the revenue that would be generated by an increase in the vehicle registration fee. The fee structure is shown in the rate column, where the fee would be based on your vehicle's value, with a lower rate for a lower valued vehicle. As you can see here, 77% of drivers would be in tier 1 or 2, with paying either $205 per year or $305 per year. And with this rate structure, the vehicle registration fee proposal would generate $9.1 billion per year. This rate would be in addition to the vehicle registration fee that you already pay, but it would be instead of what you pay at the gas pump and gas tax. So how does this proposal work? The proposed increased vehicle registration fee is a fee based on your vehicle's value. This is also considered a sustainable revenue source because it will not diminish as zero emission vehicles are purchased. The VRF proposal would be administered via the existing vehicle registration fee system through the DMV and would have little privacy concerns because the DMV already collects your vehicle's value based on the purchase price of the vehicle. And your vehicle's value tracked by the DMV is on an annual depreciation schedule and therefore would diminish over time. This new vehicle registration fee would range from $205 per vehicle to $505 per vehicle. In September of last year, the board asked staff how each proposal would affect Monterey County drivers. This table shows the cost of each proposal based on variables such as the driver's average vehicle miles traveled, a vehicle's fuel efficiency, and vehicle value. The colors represent where drivers are paying more or less per option. For example, TAMC staff, Doug Bilsey, drives an annual 15,000 miles. His car has 18 miles per gallon fuel efficiency, and it's valued at $6,000. He currently pays $510 in existing gas tax and would pay the least amount with the VRF option. In contrast, an EV owner who drives annual 12,000 miles and their vehicle value is $40,000, currently pays $118 with the existing gas tax and would pay the most with the VRF option. Each of these driver profiles suggests that the existing gas tax and EV fee structure most benefits people who drive fewer miles, have higher fuel efficiency, or who own electric vehicles. A per mile road charge requires even those with fuel efficient cars to pay their fair share to use the transportation system, and advantages drivers with less efficient vehicles who currently pay more under the gas tax. But it results in higher costs for long distance commuters and commercial drivers. A value-based vehicle registration fee disconnects payments from both fuel use and miles traveled. This structure overwhelmingly benefits high mileage drivers, such as long distance commuters, because their annual charges stay fixed no matter how much they drive. This table is a summary of the information that we've provided in this presentation with key issues or considerations that this board could take listed on the left. While the road user charge is a revenue stable user-pays mechanism that promotes health and safety by encouraging VMT reduction, there are major concerns over the ease of implementation, rural and income fairness, privacy, and administrative costs. In contrast, the vehicle registration fee option seems to only have income fairness concerns because some low VMT and high efficiency vehicle drivers would pay more than the existing gas tax, and health and safety concerns because you would pay the same regardless of the number of miles that you drive. Regarding the likelihood of adoption, any new charger fee would be politically challenging. A road user charge is currently being studied by the state, but it has its trade-offs, as you can see here. An increase in vehicle registration fee is not currently being studied by the state, but according to our analysis, it seems worth looking at further. So now is the opportunity for the board to have a discussion on the information that was presented today. Staff is proposing two options for the board's next steps. Either wait and react to legislation. We could wait for new legislation, likely supporting RUC, and advocate for the mechanism to be as equitable as possible. Or two, we could advocate for a preferred alternative. What this might look like is the agency advocating for VRF to be studied more seriously at the state level. So that concludes my presentation and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I'll open up to the floor. Anybody have any questions? Yes, Mr. Church, go ahead.
Do you want just questions now, then comments later, or questions and comments now?
Why don't we do questions first and then I'll go out to public comment.
Good.
Thanks.
Could you put back the chart up here, had the vehicle registration fees, the previous one?
Sorry.
Okay. There we go. The column on the left, it says VRF, vehicle registration fee, but that's actually the value of the vehicle?
Yes, sorry, that is the value of the vehicle.
I want to
Mhm.
make sure I understood
Yeah.
that correct then. Okay, when we get back to comments, I'll put that back up probably again, but I want to make sure I understood that one. So you gave two options. Are there any other options being discussed anywhere? I mean, seriously?
Not that I've seen seriously. There is research on other options, but they are special use cases that don't provide long-term sustainable funding.
I have a thought because I really don't like, sorry, getting into the comment, but I'll try to limit it. I really don't see the one as really equitable, frankly. I have really concerns with that, but I don't know if technologically the other options are possible. So my other question then, and then I'll just, I'll save everything else for later, is if one of these versions come in to replace the gas tax, is the gas tax going to be removed? Or eliminated at that point?
Yes, the idea is that this new funding mechanism would replace the existing gas
And
tax.
that's pretty firmly written into there that that'll happen?
That's the intention, yeah.
I mean, just because you don't usually see Sacramento getting rid of taxes. So I just want to make sure that some people aren't going to be double taxed. That's being really seriously looked at. Okay, that's fine for now then.
Thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, on the last slide where you had, this one right here.
Oh, mm-hmm.
So do like this information, really appreciate it. But when it comes to the annual miles, you're very specific on what was analyzed. Has there been any discussion, research, or consideration how generally those that are driving lower miles are more in the bigger areas, and that the cost of work on those roads within those, especially like in the traffic jam areas, is a hell of a lot more money? So had they looked at, when we raise these funds, how they're being distributed and what areas are getting the proportional, the vast majority of the funds towards the fixing of their roads?
So it's my understanding that the way that the funds would be distributed is the way that they're currently being distributed through the SB1 program. So that's grant, that's formula funds. So they would be distributed in the same way.
Okay, I'll leave it there.
Yes, go ahead. Please go ahead and I'll address the site. Thanks.
Thank you. So just going back to your early kind of presentation in terms of the different ledge proposals that are on the table. So do we know, I know obviously there was a report by the LAO, but do we know now that there's two proposals? You said the gas tax replacement spot bill. So do we know like how far is that likely, or the likelihood for that to pass and where that's at? And then also, on the pilot program, you talked about the road usage charge pilot program that was completed in 2025 and where they're at the legislature with that to try to get some type of timeline in terms of where they're at. So we know we can decide, I mean, depending on what we decide, but also I think it's important to know where are they on the timeline. Obviously, they have a lot on their plate with the budget now, but what are some of those timelines with the
I
legislature?
think that's a great question for our legislative analyst. Gus, do you want to respond?
Good morning, Gus Corey, State Legislative Analyst. Pleasure to be here. So the legislature's kind of been stuck in neutral for several years. The road user task force has been meeting for the better part of 11 years. And so I think part of it is a new construct. There are a couple other states that have a road user charge, Hawaii and Oregon being those that the state is trying to model after. Some of the reservations that have been raised about the road user charge is mainly on the implementation side. I think as Yannicka did a great job of doing the presentation, it's privacy issues and just how long you're being tracked, although some insurance companies do it. And, you know, if you think about it, there's cars all have GPS, and so we're being tracked whether we like it or not. But I think there is more volatility as far as it really is a customized assessment of who's using the roads, as opposed to, say, the vehicle registration fee, which is already in place. It's just based straight on the valuation of the car, so there aren't the privacy concerns. The thing is, there is a spot bill. The legislature has not reached a consensus on moving forward with something. And it really is about affordability. This year, we've heard Speaker Rivas talk about this. The incoming President Pro Tem Monique Limon has also mentioned it, the governor. It's all about affordability. And so unless they're presented with a solution that's at least revenue neutral, and a progressive scheme is favored. Governor Newsom has talked about that, having a progressive scheme so that, as Yannicka said, people that have to drive further are not disproportionately impacted. Especially in our county, we have a lot of ag workers, you know, a lot of low-income folks that have to drive further to job centers. They don't have the luxury of living in a transit-oriented development where it might be less affordable for them, for example. So, but we haven't pushed the vehicle registration fee idea as much. We've spoken to the California Transportation Commission. We've spoken to Caltrans, they're aware of it, but we need some direction to fully have a robust conversation about an alternative so that the legislature can move on something, especially while Governor Newsom is in office, because what tends to happen is after he's termed out, you get a new governor that's in place, and it's almost like resetting the clock. I mean, you'll get a new transportation secretary, who knows if we get a new Caltrans director, and just on and on. And so you're running in place, and it's, you know, sometimes it's one step forward, two steps back in that instance.
Thank you for that. And I mean, you're kind of understanding some of the concerns of the legislature in terms of what they're looking at. Obviously, affordability, having revenue neutral is really important for us, at least in some of our rural communities. I know for us, over 70% of our population commutes out, right? And so it's really critical because you want to establish something that's fair and it's not impacting those that are using the road more often and traveling. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I may, just so for additional context, well, one, I really want to thank Caltrans because they've been doing a ton of work behind the scenes on this, along with the Transportation Commission and TAMC staff for Director Muck and the whole staff for even bringing this for your contemplation, because I know wearing various hats, whether it's League of Cities or CSAC, you guys are all hearing about it. And so part of the anxiety is not having a true alternative, and we have to do something, because the longer we wait, the harder it is to solve the problem. That's part of it. But I think, in my humble opinion, the best way to do it is it's not just the predictability and stability of us having the funding, it's the predictability for the payor of the fee to kind of know what do they have, so that there isn't as much volatility, like, you know, hey, I had to drive further, so oh my God, I don't even know, my bill's going to be higher this month. Maybe it's lower next month. I think when people are on budgets, I think certainty is kind of a welcome thing. I think the one thing to keep in mind is that, yes, this is a successor source to the gas tax. You're still paying a registration fee. And if you own an electric vehicle, you're still paying that fee.
The electric vehicle fee is $121. That gets adjusted per inflation. And then the registration fee, which each car pays right now, is $33 to $231, based on the previous scale that Supervisor Church was asking about earlier. So my hope is that because of what Yannicka was saying about fuel economy, electric vehicles aren't that big of a problem. To be honest with you, they're less than 7% of all registered vehicles. So they're not the problem. You can't tax them enough to make up the difference. But given the governor's executive order where there's no more car sales after 2035, we have to move in that direction. Just acknowledge that there's going to be an alternative fuel to petroleum. So it should be less about the fuel source and more about just who's using the road. And everyone who has a car is using the state highway system or local streets and roads. And so there's a way to do it where if you convert over, it's at least revenue neutral, and it's possible to actually have people at the lower end of the scale save money by converting over, even if you give people a credit for what they're paying with the gas tax by converting over. And then that reg fee that I talked about, the $121, it doesn't generate that much money annually. It's 166 million. That's a drop in the bucket compared to the 8+ billion that the gas tax does. But if you charged all 32 million vehicles $4 instead of, 2 million vehicles $121, people wouldn't feel it as much. And when they convert over, I think, again, you would still maintain that revenue generation, but be more sensitive to just the payor's ability to, pay into the system and then give us the predictability to leverage our Measure X dollars among other funds against. So sorry for the long-winded answer, but it's a complicated thing, and hopefully that context is helpful.
Thank you. And before we go to the board, I see Ms. Brihota, you have your hand up. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. So great to be here again with you this morning. Lauren Brihota from Caltrans. I head up the state's research into the road use charge idea. I just wanted to respond a little bit to the question about where the legislature is with a bit of history. When we think back to SB1, when that went through, that was a process where the legislature kind of took 2-ish years to discuss and float ideas and have conversations. And one of the big players in that conversation was the Fix Our Roads Coalition, which was a group of labor, chamber of commerce, local government that came together to really drive that conversation. And so I know, knowing that history, looking to where we are today, we do have a new coalition that's been formed, the Fair Transportation Funding Coalition, that has a lot of those same players. I believe California State Association of Counties, League of Cities may be involved in those conversations. So with AB 1421 out there, I believe the chair is really looking for that to be a vehicle to drive conversation. So in terms of your two options, in terms of action, I would almost propose both. You want to be engaging in the conversations that are going on behind the scenes currently, and then of course actively watch what comes out in print in a bill as well. So just wanted to give that kind of historical perspective to feed into the conversation. Thank you.
And thank you for sharing that. We'll go back to the board for questions. Go ahead.
Yeah, question, if you could go back to the chart that showed the miles traveled and also the miles per gallon was one of the charts that I wanted to address.
My clicker stopped working.
Well, I'll just go to the question, was if my
That one.
household, I have, not that one, it's the miles per gallon for the vehicles. Vehicles value,
Down,
miles
down,
per
down.
gallon.
To the chart with all the different values. and
Yes.
Yeah. Keep going down. The one with the colors.
It was for, yeah.
One more. Keep going. 2 more. There.
There you go. I just want to know what Doug Bilsey wants. Because he's kind of the classic, fits in the category. So if I have a car, one vehicle I have is 15 miles to the gallon. It's a big car, it's multi-use, I tow, I can haul, I go to the snow. So it's 50 miles a gallon. It's a SUV, which a lot of people have in California. But then if I go to the category in this chart, you obviously are listing different miles per gallons. Is that anticipated to be in a factor of an assessment by the state, so that if I drive a high miles per gallon vehicle or low miles per gallon versus a 30 miles per gallon, is the state leaning towards some phase of a penalty because of that car? Or is that silent? You just gave this as an illustration, but so far are they being silent on the miles per gallon of the type of vehicle that a consumer is choosing to drive?
I don't know the answer to that question, but it sounds like Gus does. And maybe Lauren?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I could defer to Lauren on this, but no, it's when you're getting rid of the gas tax, the fuel economy doesn't matter. It's more accounting for actual vehicle miles traveled. And Caltrans does a report, by the way, where they detail vehicle miles traveled by local jurisdiction on county roads and on the state highway system. So they would just kind of take that in the aggregate, and however they want it, if it's per individual, there's 27 million drivers in the state. I think in the county, we have just about 280,000 drivers, and there's about 288,000 vehicles. So if it's by driver or by vehicle.
Yeah, and the other phase of that too is the portion of getting to the transition to go to a new system. Are they talking about having it purely with a tracking device on the vehicle? Older car has to go in and have something added. Or are they going to rely on insurance companies? Or are they going to rely on at the smogging station where we smog a vehicle every 2 years? What are they talking about in terms of capturing the data? And I would think it's going to be multiple systems in the beginning.
Should we have Lauren respond to that question? I think she has.
Thank
the
you. Those
most.
are good questions. So just to the first point, the current system under the gas tax actually takes into consider the MPG of the vehicle. That's kind of the problem that we're trying to solve here, because you have folks who have very fuel efficient vehicles who are not paying that much into the system, and those who have low fuel efficient paying a lot. And what we've found in our research is those who tend to own the low fuel efficient vehicles are those in rural communities or in low income communities. So we don't want that. So the idea of both a road charge and a registration fee is getting away from the fuel source, the MPG, entirely, right? In terms of how it would work and how people would report their miles, we envision a system that would have a range of options that would go from very low tech to very high tech, so that people can control their own data. We don't need location. If people want to include location, they can. There's pluses and minuses to that. But if you just want to go into a place like a Jiffy Lube and have your odometer read once a year, you can do that. If you want to leverage the in-vehicle telematics in your car, you can do that. You know, it's going to be up to personal choice. And that's really the key to protecting people's privacy, is letting each individual choose how they want to report their mileage.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead. Thank you. There are at least a half a dozen or more states in the US that base their personal vehicle registration not on miles traveled, not on value, but on the simple weight of the vehicle, which is arguably what has the greatest impact on the roads themselves. And your battery electric cars and hybrid cars weigh 20 to 30% more than an internal combustion engine. So that's a way of capturing that. Where is the discussion of vehicle weight in all of this? Because it certainly seems like a simple way. When you purchase the vehicle, you know how much it weighs. And it doesn't change.
Go ahead, Laura. It looks like you have the answer.
Yeah. So we actually already have weight fees in place in California for commercial vehicles specifically. And for that specific definition, pickup trucks are included as commercial vehicles. That is in addition to the gas tax. So that is already there. We have looked at weight in terms of road use charging and how a rate structure could work. I think it definitely makes some sense on the commercial vehicle side. When you think about the impact of weight on our transportation system and pavement and bridges, the relationship is not linear, it's exponential. So that means that lower weight, there's really not much difference than the really high weights, like the big Class 8 trucks, you see a lot of impact. So what that means, practically speaking, is vehicles that are under 10,000 pounds really don't have that much difference of impact on the system. And that's basically all passenger vehicles, including EVs with their heavier battery. When you get above 10,000 pounds, that's where it becomes more of a factor. That's where, adding the EV battery will have even more. So when we look at weight as a factor in our research, where we see where it may be practical is on the commercial vehicle side. But again, we already have those late fees in California on the commercial vehicle side. So those are existing revenues that are in place. That revenue specifically actually goes to paying off Prop 1B bond debt.
Thank you. Supervisor Leo?
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you to our lobbyist, Gus Corey, for coming from Sacramento. Good to have you here in person. I did, first of all, just want to express some concerns, right, with just vehicle miles, the road charge, putting a device in people's vehicles. We always know with that, especially going into the future with the advancement of AI, finding ways to manipulate devices, right? And we know that's going to be a factor going into the future. But going into both these proposals, each one has, it carries that sticker shock, right? When you're pumping gas, you're paying a few dimes with every time you fuel up. But with these two options, I don't think we get the realistic impression, because it's these potential amounts plus their existing registration fees, which if they're about $110, then add that to these numbers under each proposal. So the sticker shock's even going to be higher, right? If they're paying $110 now, and then the next under these proposals they're paying, when they get a once a year bill of $500 or $600, you could see how that could easily become very unpopular and hard for a governor or the legislature to support in a time when they're all talking about affordability. But the question is, why wouldn't the legislature look into addressing the inequities that exist currently, right? Like address this issue in phases or in bites. But just from what you see up there, the EV users, even though, Gus, you said they're only 7% of the vehicles on the road, they're right now being subsidized by everybody else, all right? They're not paying their fair share. They pay $118 EV fee, and look at everybody else up there, what they're paying. And you compare that to, it seems like that would be one area at least to start, having them pay the fair share either through these models, one of these two models. But you compare it to that North County driver, just a few bars up, if they're paying dimes at every time they fuel up, and if they're commuting to the Bay Area, and all of a sudden they get the $700 charge plus the $110 average fee, now you're seeing a once a yearly $800 bill, which I don't know how successful that's going to be. So going to the long-term strategy, this year, it doesn't seem like anything's going to happen because it's an election year, right? And this governor doesn't seem to is not going to want to tackle such a controversial issue. We're going to kick it down the road. It seems like, well, not us, but the legislature. But on the question of taking a position, I don't see how it helps us taking a position on any of these. I'm glad we've had a couple of workshops already, because we all are trying to come up to speed on what's being discussed. But rather than waiting for a bill to move in and have the negotiations actually take place, if that happens 2 or 3 years down the road, can you explain just what's a realistic timeline, and what's your recommendation for taking a position and now or just shortly down the road versus waiting for the bill to happen, right, and wait for the negotiations to happen at the Capitol?
Yeah, so great questions and observations, and a lot of respect for you, Supervisor, because you were a former legislator. You know the political climate there. Just backing up for context. So with the vehicle registration fee, what I would submit is when we did it in Senate Bill 1, that was back in 2017, that was a new fee. And as Lauren kind of alluded to, I think originally when the coalition was formed, they were just looking at increasing the gas tax. And that wasn't gaining traction for 2 years, plus a special session. Once the vehicle registration fee concept was introduced, legislators liked it because it was progressive. And then the fact that cars depreciate, I think for them was like, okay, great. So, if you have your car over time, you saw like that bucket, the bottom two tiers, 77% of everyone in the state has a car that's worth less than $25,000. So, from an equity standpoint, that seemed to kind of resonate with folks. There's a way to construct this, I think. What we haven't necessarily done is aggregated what people truly pay. And that's, again, you're paying a gas tax, you're paying a reg fee, and then if you have an electric vehicle, you're paying an additional fee on top of that. So if you are to consolidate, and really, you're just trying to get to a number. So the vehicle registration fee generates $2.5 billion. The gas tax generates about $8 billion in change. So in the aggregate, even if you account for the cost of living adjustment that happens on an annual basis, it's about $10.7 billion. So I think for a legislator, like if I was in office, it's an election year, you have a governor that clearly has national aspirations, it's about affordability. And so if I can sell the fact mathematically, not just with rhetoric or anything, but mathematically, so-and-so that lives in Monterey County, this is what you're currently paying. If your car's in this tier, you're actually saving because you're not paying as much as you would under what the gas tax was charging, because what we're doing is we're reintroducing a population of people that don't pay into the system anymore because they have a more fuel efficient vehicle. They might have an EV, they're telecommuting, whatever it is, right? It's either that, or you can correlate it if you wanted to the vehicle miles traveled and just have it go over again, a larger denominator of people, which is 32 million registered vehicles, or it's 27 million drivers, so that it's just, we're taking less of a hit, because to be quite frank, it's not all Monterey residents that generate VMT. I mean, we're fortunate to have a beautiful county where everyone wants to come here. And so, it's kind of hard to penalize people for having to, they want to spend their tax dollars, and it's helping out our economy too. So if there's an equitable way to do it where on average, what do people pay? I think that it is sellable. What we're asking for, here's what I'm not suggesting. I'm not suggesting that if it's like, hey, Gus, this is a great idea, we're not going to go and introduce a bill. It's a coalition, as Lauren was talking about. So it's educating, talking to our delegation, talking to our affiliates, the League of Cities, CSAC, self-help counties, CalCog, everybody, just to say, hey, can we move the needle on something? The administration right now doesn't have anything else to react to because there isn't a formal or more intentional conversation occurring on an alternative. And that's why Caltrans and others have been just working on the road user charge, because they were statutorily required to look at this as an alternative. So hopefully that clarifies things. And so we wouldn't introduce anything. We talked to environmental groups. We'd want to talk to everyone before anything is even introduced to see if there's something that's agreeable, for people to rally behind.
So I agree, and I'm not seeing us as being any leader on this. It's a coalition of transportation agencies all over the state and a lot of other stakeholders. But I'm just saying, realizing that this year, it's likely no real negotiations are going to happen because of the election cycle. And then a new governor coming in, and I'm not sure he or she wants to have this be one of the first issues of controversy that is taken up. And I say that because in 2003, right, Governor Gray Davis was recalled successfully by Arnold Schwarzenegger on the vehicle registration fee, and that was not?
No, well, separate, and it's confusing. So that was the vehicle license fee, which is a 2% charge. It's astronomically more. And that goes to ERAF and other things. So, when you're getting a bill for $1,500, let's say, that's way different than, this is a flat fee, per tier. So
Okay,
it's more modest. But I hear what you're saying.
Both are new charges, right? Increased charges.
Yeah.
But I remember then the amount, I think they had almost doubled. It was, I think it was talking about an average of
Triple.
200, triple.
Yeah.
But if I remember correctly, it's been 23 years. It was about 250 average to 350 maybe. This is much more than that, right? And that is why when I realistically think about what political will there is to tackle this, I'm not sure if it's this year or next year. And I know I'm getting where you're coming from. on the question, do transportation agencies take a position then to advocate for that in a coalition? I could see where that is helpful, but I just want, I'm just questioning whether strategically it helps us to get ahead of a bill, knowing next year or the year after that, I don't think there's going to be much serious negotiations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just very quick. So I just want to reiterate that this is a conversion. It wouldn't be an increase, which is what SB one was. That was definitely an increase. At the time, it was a $25 to a $125, if I'm not mistaken, charge based on the vehicle valuation. So we're not increasing. We're just saying, what do people currently pay? Can they break even, if not even pay less? If possible. I think that would be the pitch. Otherwise, I agree. No one's going to say, oh, yes, let's charge people more money when they're already, struggling to make ends meet. I don't think there's any member on either side of the aisle that's going to want to do anything like that this year or any year.
Thank you. Can I just quickly go to Lauren again? She has her hand raised. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to give some information that came out in the course of those observations. So in terms of the annual fee, definitely a registration fee is annual. That's the way the DMV system works. On a road charge side, it could be annual, but it could also be quarterly, monthly. We anticipate that people would have options on how frequently they paid, so they could make it fit into their budget in the way that's best for them, right? Both of these options, road charge and the registration fee, could be done only for electric vehicles. If you wanted to just do that subset in the near term, that is an option for both. And indeed, in terms of the stakeholder work that we've done on road charge specifically, it's the express preference of Trucking Association, Native American tribes, rural communities. They'd like to do it just for EVs, right? The trade-off for that is it is not as complete of a revenue replacement because it only deals with the lost revenue from EVs. It does not deal with the lost revenue from fuel efficiency. So those are just kind of the trade-offs you need to think about in that space. In terms of timeline, of course, the administration has no position on this, but I do feel like the legislature is starting to get more interested in digging into it. So in that sense, I always advise stakeholders to be as engaged as they can to make sure that your preferences are being part of those discussions.
Thank you, Lauren. Go ahead, Mr. LeBar.
And Chair, I was going to make more comment, but I will defer if there was more questions first.
Go ahead. Mr. Barron, you had a comment?
Thank you. So through this conversation is presented as option one or option two. It seems like if we're going to do anything, it's either going to be one or the other. Is that accurate? Or is there room for a solution that involves part of option one and part of the registration fee option two? And I understand that that may be a political question and not just a technical question.
Yeah, I mean, the option, just for clarification, option one and option two was just a header to help you know that there's a differentiation between these two proposals. But I think in terms of what the board wants to advocate for, that's up to the board.
Well, maybe I should ask Gus, because maybe that is a political question, replacing one fee with either one or two other fees. Maybe that's a political question that we should be thinking about. I don't know what the answer to that question is.
It's a great question. I think the legislature's all ears. I don't want to speak for the department. I'm sure they would be all ears. It's just the longer we wait, as I said, the harder it is to take care of the solution. It's just revenues are dropping at such a pace where I'll tell you for like the State Highway Operations Program, if I'm not mistaken, I heard they were looking at like a 16% cutback, and that's for safety projects. And so it just gets harder to make up that difference. And, we're already taxing ourselves to be a part of the solution. So if we can't rely on what, like Yannicka said, is 46% of the pie, it just gets more difficult to, keep promises to voters. And so I think the short answer is, I think folks are all ears if there's a hybrid. I've contemplated that in sort of my analysis, like if you do a conversion and you do factor in vehicle miles traveled, what does that take to kind of get to a number, And again, it's really pegged to what the revenue generation currently is. And so with the reg fee,
with the gas tax, and the reg fee revenue, by the way, has been going up. Since in 2017, they estimated that it would be about $1.7 billion annually. It's now $2.5 billion annually. So it's about a 50% increase in 8 years. That's a pretty good, and no one really talks about the reg fee. Just to Lauren's point, nothing's set in stone as far as the revenue collection, the frequency of it. There's nothing to preclude the legislature from having a monthly thing or, whatever they want, or exempting things. In my analysis, just so folks are, because this has come up in past conversations, farm equipment is exempt, so we're not using that. That's a very, very small percentage. It's like 150,000 statewide anyway. It's not trailers, it's really cars, motorcycles, and trucks, light duty trucks. As Lauren mentioned, there's a special weight fee for commercial vehicles there. So.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
If I may, I'm sorry about that. Again, I'm just interested, mostly I'm just interested in maybe I should be asking Director Alejo, like, for sort of the political ramifications of voting for two new fees as opposed to one new fee. Like, is that something that the 120 representatives that we have in Sacramento are going to be thinking about when they decide whether we're going to go down this road at all? Like, is two fees, one based on the number of cars you have and one based on the number of miles that you drive, is that more unpalatable? Because it's two fees, like, we're going to be paying this tax twice, as opposed to just picking one or the other. Like, is two worse than one, even if the revenue numbers are the same?
Mr. Chair, I think it just comes down to the math. If you could sell to people that they're breaking even or paying less, that might be something that gets the attention. I'll tell you that in the legislature, the Republican caucus on either side has been the most vocal about we should get rid of the gas tax. Well, then there's no money for safety projects, for local streets and roads, for anything if we do that. So you definitely need a replacement. And again, on the Democratic side, it's really nonpartisan. Everyone's talking about affordability. So it just comes down to the math. It doesn't matter what the fee is, but the VRF is something that's currently collected.
Thank you. Anybody who has not asked a question, go ahead, Director Askew.
Just questions. I have comments.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Okay, then I do have a couple of questions. Noting that this is VMT is in the mix here, does AMBAG get into the proceedings?
I'm sorry.
I was just wondering if we were discussing VMT effectively, like as a component here. Typically, whenever VMT comes in, AMBAG is part of the discussion, and I just wanted to know if AMBAG would be part of the discussion here or not.
We have been participating in statewide discussions about a gas tax replacement, and we do assume something will replace the gas tax in our long-range transportation plan, but we have not gone on record. We don't typically have a legislative platform since we are almost entirely federally funded on relations like this, but we do recognize the need that there are dwindling state and federal funds related to transportation, and that something needs to be. On a personal note, I did participate in 2 of the pilot programs related to the road user charge, and surprisingly, my fake bill was much less than I currently pay now. And I was pleasantly surprised because I do travel all 3 counties on a weekly basis and often to Sacramento. And I do see the privacy concerns. I have a smartphone, it tracks me anyways. So I think a lot of people could probably get over some of those privacy issues, but I do see there's a need for a lot of discussion and a lot more study. Maybe something on a more pilot basis rather than, a smaller group pilot, but a larger pilot could be something that moves forward statewide and get to the other, like the other states that have already implemented it.
Okay, thank you for that. And then I think there was a question tossed about, like, there are 2 options here. Technically, we also talked about personal choice, right? So you could also argue that you could give a choice to the end user to decide between both options. Fair to say? Okay. So I'll go to public comment if there's no other questions. Any public comment on this matter? Noting that there are none, I'll bring it back to the board for an actual discussion and feedback on where we want to go with this. Go ahead, Mr. Church.
So could we go back to that, the one slide, then the one with the VRF that I looked at earlier? I'll go with that one first. And really express this why I'm really uncomfortable with both of these, not that one, the other slide. And again, it's really comes with equity issues and there's different issues, different ways. Here we go. And I look at this, and so the vehicle you buy on the left is, it's the cost, and then of course there's the rate for the actual fee over towards the right. And I look at this, somebody buys a $4,000 vehicle, they're working person, or so, limited income, and they're having to pay a $200 a year fee on that vehicle. That's 5%, 5% of the value. And you get somebody over here, let's pull up a $60,000 vehicle, like a supervisor or somebody. And, and you look at the fee, it's less than 1%. Right away, that's just not equitable at all. The burden is coming on to those that can least pay it. And I mean, there's ways that could be worked around. I'm sure, to make it more equitable, but that is it. The fee rate is only 2.5 times when the vehicle rate could be 15 times in terms of value. So if equity is an issue, this is flawed, bad. And if we look at the other particular part, and and this is on the fees with the 2.5 cents a mile. And I think, we kind of alluded to this earlier. Mayor of Alaska has kind of suggested it here a little bit, is, you're going to throw the burden on the rural folks who are driving. Somebody's driving 50, 100 miles a day is going to pay a lot more than somebody who lives in the city and just drives 5 or 10 miles. I mean, again, we're facing some equity issues on that. I guess you could always say, well, everybody's, that's the price for not living near where you work or living out in the country, and maybe so. But the other thing about that is, I know we're moving, the goal is to a carbon neutral period, but it would seem to me we still want to conserve energy. And that 2.5 cents charge doesn't conserve energy at all. It's just flat route across. Well, if you have the gas tax as it stands now, it actually is kind of fair on both sides. Yes, you may not do so many miles in the city, but you're going to get a lot less miles per gallon you would doing highway mileage. So there's a little more equity in in terms of conservation of energy that way. And I'm not, if we were to look at something like you're going down the line, I think, you need keeping the gas tax for gas vehicles seems to be a proper step if we're wanting to move to a carbon neutral future, because that's keeping a fee that could be increasing as we want to move away from those, and it penalizes those and encourages something with electric vehicles. But so when I look at this, I'm just not comfortable with either one of these. That's where I'm going to bring up, I wonder if there's been some talk about any other suggestion, is why aren't we finding a way to meter the amount of electricity going in a vehicle and paying on that? I mean, has that been discussed? I mean, there's got to be, meters you can put on when you go to a station a tax can be put on there, or even when there's one put in the home. Why isn't that being considered?
Yeah. So, Mr. Chair, if I may, so going back to, because you made some really important observations. I think the one thing that we were remiss and not showing you today is, again, the aggregate of what people pay. So when you look at that $205 charge, remember, that's in lieu of the gas tax. So you have a gas tax, you have a registration fee, and then if you own an electric vehicle, you're paying another fee on top of that. I think what we need to do is show you a different chart that shows in the aggregate, what do people pay? What are you converting over to? Do people break even? Do they save money at the various tiers? that might better inform like your decision on how you want to proceed. The second question on if we keep chasing different fuel sources, we lose. I mean, you've seen it even on the transit side, sales tax on diesel, that's been declining. And so what happened about 15 years ago is the legislature said, we want to get transportation out of the general fund because you're competing with education, health and human services. So we're going to make you dependent upon the sales tax on diesel. Well, that's super volatile. Now we're weaning our dependence off of diesel. And so whether it's hydrogen or it's natural gas or it's electricity, we always seem to be, deviating from whatever fuel source we're relying upon. And so I think just having something that's a little bit more agnostic, if you have a car, you're driving, that's sort of like your price of admission for using the highway system or local streets and roads. That seems to be, practical. But I mean, to the earlier point, I think we're not locked into any particular solution. We just need a solution. We can't rely on the gas tax anymore. It's like having a bad stock in your portfolio, and it's going to tank your whole entire, retirement, horizon because of that bad stock. I mean, we have to just get away from our dependence on the gas tax outside of just, theoretical things about it's better for the environment and such. It's a depleting revenue source that's going to make it difficult for us to deliver anything going forward.
Well, I think it's more in theoretical that it's better for the environment. I think it's factual. And I think, if you want to move to a carbon neutral, you want to keep that tax because it makes it more and more prohibitive to utilize the gas vehicles. At least that's going to be my opinion. That's why I'm suggesting, it just seems you encourage it, you replace it with electrical tax. But I guess we disagree on that. And the final point I just want to make is I don't think Carl's point on weight was really fully developed. I mean, perhaps what he was suggesting. And I know there's already a weight fee onto there, but I think the point was, and he's right, a heavier vehicle, that's why there's a heavy vehicle fee for weight for trucks, is that if you use the weight to replace, then you would actually be measuring the cost on the road. That means the weight fee might increase up, but you would have light cars would be a lot less, big trucks would be a lot more. That's what's damaging the roads.
Right. Well, just Mr. Chair, to that point, Carl might remember a situation though with the Transit Association that happened where local cities were complaining about heavy buses and how that was degrading the condition of the roads. And they wanted the transit agencies to assume more of the responsibility for that, which is pretty hard to do when buses are heavier. You've got ADA compliance and there's just other bells and whistles or heavier tanks at the time from CNG or whatever. So we just don't want that to backfire and create other, issues as well. And as Lauren mentioned, they do it for commercial trucks, but not for light duty or, cars or motorcycles and such. But again, all ideas should be on the table.
Thank you. Lauren, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Yes, just to answer the question regarding, have we looked at rates on electricity? We've done some basic exploration of that idea. The issue is that about 85% of people charge at home. And so we don't currently have the infrastructure that breaks out those charges that are going to the electric vehicle versus the rest of the home's electricity. So practically speaking, right now, at least the technology is not there to kind of roll out that kind of system. That could change in the future, definitely as in-vehicle telematics expand more potentially. But right now, that's why people have not necessarily done a deep dive on that issue. As to the other points, you are wrestling with the classic conflict of goals, right? The state has a lot of critical goals. One is stabilizing our revenue. One is, climate and environment, reducing VMTs, shifting vehicles and all those things. And then, of course, equity. You're wrestling with it because you can't do all three. You have to make choices. That's what makes this tough. So yes, you could definitely choose to have a structure, whether in registration fees or road charge, that continues to support the move to EVs, right? Or you could have one that supports more low-income folks. They're not going to be the same, right? Especially because if you think about it, most at this point in time, EV owners tend to be higher up on the economic scale, right? So you have those trade-offs to think about. They are real trade-offs, and you will have to decide which one you want to focus on. I will say that our report that will be coming out next year, as required by SB 339, is required to speak to some of the pros and cons of different rate structures, whether it's based on weight, whether it's based on fuel efficiency, income, those kind of things. Each of them has trade-offs. It is true. So that is the fun wrestling that, yes, you get to deal with as an elected official. So I appreciate your engaging in that wrestling.
Thank you, Lauren. Go ahead, Mr. Uber.
Thank you, Chair. And I really do appreciate the discussion. And this slide, Gus, you're right, if it had the total impacts all the way through. But I'd want to make a couple points. And Lauren, thank you for mentioning on the vehicle mile charge portion, it could be paid quarterly or monthly. So obviously the VRF could be set up exactly the same. And that's what I would advocate. So you could actually predict what your monthly expense for registration would be. I do have concerns on the different reporting mechanisms for the vehicle miles traveled portion, because that will automatically incur some kind of enforcement penalty. If there was a mistake, the state would absolutely say if you were off on your mileage, you're going to get charged a fine. Or if you misreport, let's say you overreported, you're going to fill out some kind of form to get your money back. These are unnecessarily burdensome components that will naturally fall within that type of system. When you look at the VRF, and obviously I've always advocated, I believe the VRF is the better way to go, but our legislators should be looking at this question like this. Not one option, but these options is how they should be discussing this. And both should be clearly given the choice of paying by the month, fixed rate or unknowable rate. But on the low miles, you see that difference that the vehicle mile charge is lower as opposed to the VRF. I would like you to consider the fact that most of those miles are going to be done within large urban areas. So where they have shorter commutes, but they're also hitting those traffic jam areas. The bulk of the damage to a road is done on stop and go traffic. It is not when you have the weight consistently moving over the road. So even a small vehicle going stop and go, it will damage a road 2 to 5 times more than in areas where you're able to travel smoothly, regardless of the weight. And the reason I point that out, and thanks for bringing up the SB1 funds, 50% of those go to the state for their maintenance, which will be priority fixes. Those highway miles that are at those urban areas that are receiving 2 to 5 times more damage by their traffic will necessitate the bulk of those dollars will go to fixing those roads. Their per mile road to fix in those areas are significantly higher than it is the per mile road on our highways down here. Not just 1 or 2 times, it could be up to 10 times more to fix the same mile of a highway in those areas, which means that those people traveling and paying that lower rate in that area are being subsidized by our people who travel farther to get to their job. By going to the vehicle registration, for me, that is why it's preferable, by making everyone pay the same. But Supervisor Church did bring up an interesting level on what that level is as you get to the higher vehicles. I would like to have that discussion later, Gus. It is a more preferable model. It does not incur a penalty other than the normal penalty we all get right now. You don't pay registration, you don't get your sticker. So I know what our question is. I would suggest that we definitely want to put forward the VRF, but we want to encourage our legislators to actively look at both models so that we can have a discussion and we can provide input why we think this might be better or this might be worse. Because if they get focused on one item, that's all it's going to be voted on. This has to be part of the discussion. And this is the fairest way, in my opinion, and it comes back down to, we have to replace those dollars, and we have to replace it in a consistent manner. So thank you, Chair, for let me go on and on.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
And I think we're getting to a point where we're formulating what we need to do next. It seems like we're not yet there with either of the option, but both the options might be a strategy. Please go ahead, Ms. Velasquez.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll keep mine short because I know that there's been a lot of discussion. So I think for today's conversation, just bringing it back to a closure and I know there's been a lot of discussions, but today was obviously the information and then providing input, right? So I think there was a lot of input that was provided for today. But also, how do we move forward? So obviously we can't do anything, and I just want to be clear because even whatever option we select, the road charge or the VRF, we still have to wait for implementation on the legislative side. We cannot do that here in Monterey County. I just want to be clear because I think there's, I just want to be clear on that, just for clarity. If we still have to be able to do that statewide. Because we have to be able to replace the SB1 funding, and that has to be statewide. So our discussion of what options right now, I mean, it's still a statewide discussion. And for us, I think it's important, as was said, is taking a position and looking at both models, and maybe it's none of them are perfect, but looking at both of them. But I would suggest too that we include our board key considerations. I know that was alluded to already in that one slide, but adding a lot of the discussion that happened here today so that we're clear on what are those key considerations for the TAMC board. And I also want to just make a comment also, and I know it's made, but I want to make sure I state this clearly, is I want to make sure that we don't penalize our underserved communities either in any of the models, and that it's fair, because people we know right now, especially in a lot of our rural communities that have to commute, people don't work where they live because we know we have a job and housing imbalance. And so I think we have to make sure that we address that and we're not penalizing some of the commuters because they don't have the opportunity to work where they live. And obviously that's something we all strive for, but that's not where we're at.
Understood. And thank you for your comments. Go ahead, Ms. Askew.
Thank you. I just want to again, thank you for the presentation and thank you for bringing this back so we can really understand the details, the context, where we fit in the scheme of the state. And I appreciate Director Church. Thank you. I mean, you hit for me, as I've thought about this and read through all of the background information, it really is the tension between the environmental issues, the affordability issues, and sort of the equity issues. It's, you go one side, you go the other side, balance. And the gas tax itself, I think, was what served to address the environmental benefits and some, as a priority, but at the cost of affordability now, and some very real equity issues, and recognizing that the state is now saying, hey, like, this isn't going to continue, and from our duty to maintain the safety of our roads, it's going away. It's not going to continue. I think we have this responsibility as TAMC representatives to play a role in advocating on behalf of both our fiduciary responsibility to maintain funding for our infrastructure, as well as advocating on behalf of our residents who do have some unique demographics within the state and need us to represent them as the conversation takes place around the state. So we don't get to tell the state what to do, but this opportunity uniquely that exists right now to do some education and coalition building, I think we're well positioned to play a role in that. And I would hope that we could give direction as a TAMC body to empower our staff and lobbyist team to go forward and spend some time engaging in conversations and engaging in some coalition building with other Central Coast partners around education on the issues that are at the table, making sure that the best interests of our residents are at the forefront of the conversation. From where I'm looking at this, putting all of the information forward, because there is an education component to this, but the reality is the current situation is not going to provide us with the funding that we need moving forward. We have rural drivers in our rural Central Coast who there are real equity issues at play that we need to make sure that their needs are at the forefront of any conversation that takes place. And we don't want to leave behind the environmental issues that are there, but how do we fit those in? And so maybe it is the VRF as a primary option to move forward, but there has to be a conversation. And I think TAMC and our TAMC staff are well respected. I'm in the coalitions that I've seen and in the conversations that we've been able to participate in Sacramento the past 2 years. Our TAMC team is really well positioned to bring some of our regional partners together and have these conversations and lead some coalition building and see where there is, what does everyone else say? What is everyone else thinking? Is there a space where we have agreement, and can we collectively make sure that the needs of our community are at the table as the conversation moves forward at the state? So I would hope that we could give that direction today and we can finish the conversation, but I'm happy to provide a motion if that's
Okay,
appropriate.
sounds great. Go ahead.
I'm going to try and be brief. Whenever I sit down in a board, I'm always asking myself, what is the policy decision to make? All of the comments today are great, but we need to not make this bigger than it is. This is an answer to a sinking fund in the state of California, and this has been going on for 11 years, I think. It's been studied. The state is not yet with legislation for us to choose which one or which model. I think it's right to continue to work with our lobbyist, Gus, and thank you for coming. I think Gus has got a better sense of what actions we could take as a voice. I don't know that there's a model that we would land on. I think that there are some top priorities that we would be able to articulate with you, that we could advocate when the opportunities come on, but we are kind of in a wait and react because we don't have specific legislation that is leaning into a model. I do favor one model over the other. I think we should have our voice and advocate that we are sensitive to our dilemma of a rural county, but I think it's a combination of wait and see, and maybe we ask Gus, could you come back and formulate some position that would include our priorities that are talking about the rural factor, the miles, the values of the cars, where we come up with something that it is a replacement of gas tax at the state level and the same amount of money paid on average to most drivers. I don't think we're ready for outreach and education. I think that'd get really confusing. Until we have clarity on our position, I think we should work with Gus and figure that out and then come back in a couple of months and see if that statement of our advocacy kind of matches where we're all sitting in a couple of months. Because we don't have any decision on a policy to make today that's specific enough to take out and advocate in the community for positioning. I think we should fine tune this. Gus can play back and hear our comments. I think Gus could come up with a statement that would generally advocate for what we're going to want to do when the opportunities arise in the state legislation. That's kind of my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
So, and I absolutely understand that, but what I understood here, this is about, and what Supervisor Askew had talked about, the VRF is not part of the conversation right now. And that's the problem. The state is only looking at one thing. And if we do not provide direction, and what I see us as doing is providing direction to start the coalition building. So the VFR, if no one starts that, if we wait a couple more months, and yes, the legislative process can take, I agree with Supervisor Lejo, no decision is going to be done this year.
Right.
But when you look how long they've spent on the vehicle mile traveled portion of it, we're way behind the game of getting an alternative conversation going. And that's where I said, I wish they were talking about both things when they're having discussions, and both of those items were up there. So I would prefer to see us provide the direction of start that coalition building. We've already mentioned within our different comments some of our other priorities. And Gus has acknowledged he's going to retweak some of those things to bring back to us, especially the overall cost for each item when you add everything up. But I hope that we could honestly begin those conversations now, because they will be happening at his level, but also our TAMC staff level. And that's what they're looking for, is can we start having that conversation?
Mike, we're in agreement. I'm not saying we do nothing. I'm saying that we fine tune what our priorities are and what modeling that we believe represents Monterey County. And it's going to have to come in a legislative priority statement. And I just don't think we're ready for that statement. I think that Gus has heard from us. We've articulated what our priorities are. I think it's time to put some of this down to print and see if this resonates with us.
Yeah,
But you're right. We need to include the models that don't penalize Monterey County and is fair and equitable.
So there I disagree. And I'm sorry, Chair, I'm just going to take this one moment. Today's is about moving the idea forward. Developing a model that is specific for us and it works best for us will take a little more time. They're independent. They can go, things can go concurrently. All we're doing is providing our lobbyists and our staff the ability to have those conversations so they can start saying, there is another way to do this. As we work through, this is what would work really well for our people. And if that was a motion you made, I will second it, but I would rather us start having the ability for our people to start moving those conversations, because we are in a one-sided place right now when it comes to the replacement. So, and thank you, Chair, for the extra time.
All right, thank you. And it looks like, first of all, there's a robust conversation here. Thank you for everybody that's participated. Thank you, Lauren, for being here too. And I think we're on a stage where we need to really push forward with both of our objectives, or both of the items that are presented forward here, and in the best way on how to push it. What I'm hearing is there's a coalition being built at Sacramento already. They're pushing forward with a certain option, but I don't know if they've really heard about the second option that's there, or are they even advocating for it or not. So my suggestion is just present all the options, provide the comparison as Mayor LeVar had stated, and really see where that lays us. And really, to Lauren and everybody's point, this is really a wrestling of like a lot of priorities together. I can actually make a case for the EV too. A few years ago, when the EV was piloted, the intent was to say, we're going to make the environment better. And now we're saying we're going to penalize you because the gas tax is reducing. So where are we taking the EV owners into consideration? So my point is, there's a lot of priorities here. There's a lot of groups involved, and I think it's best for us to kind of look at all options to see what is presented, and the best way to do it is through Gus and team. So Gus, I wouldn't want to bottle you into a certain kind of category or way to do something. What I would want to do is explore all the options and make sure that we are represented correctly at all levels with all equitable considerations. So with that, I know like Mayor, Supervisor Askew, you wanted to make a motion, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll just, I'll restate my previous comment as a motion. And I think just to clarify, as Director LeVar stated, what I'm hearing from in the conversations with our TMZ team is that they're looking for some direction and clarity so that they can engage in conversation. We're premature to create a firm position from Monterey County without knowing where the the alliance lies, where the coalition might lie. And so being able to have those conversations will help us then determine like where there's support and where we can have strength of a position. And so the motion that I'd like to make is to take the discussion that occurred today and direct our TAMC staff to work with our lobbyists and engage in conversations with other Central Coast agencies to explore the alternatives to the gas tax and return to TMZ with updates about where consensus may exist for where what positions of support we may be able to come to together as a coalition.
Can I make a friendly amendment
Well,
to that?
let's see if there's a second.
So
We'll
I
see if the
think-
second holds.
Is there a second yet?
Yeah, Mayor Labarge.
Okay, so there was an initial second, but I'll wait for the formal second.
So yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, and then a friendly amendment, sorry.
So I just want to make sure I'm clear on the motion because I know there was a lot of discussion on the key elements that was brought up during the discussion. So I just want to make sure that that motion includes all of the key elements that were presented as part of what's important to us in TAMZ and the additional ones that were discussed during the conversation.
To be clear, prioritizing the need to protect our funding for road infrastructure and safety to replace the gas tax and to make sure and to fundamentally ensure that the needs of the voices of our rural residents are protected in the conversation and at the forefront. So absolutely, yes, thank you for that clarification. And then with our,
So
through the chair, I'll ask for.
So the friendly emotion
Yeah, go
was,
ahead.
I was a little confused about what the motion was, but I think you did it at the end. But directing staff to work with Gus to formulate a statement of what we would see again, based on a proposal that is our position. I don't think we can go advocate for anything yet. You talked about a coalition. So I don't think we're ready to go out to anybody yet until we see a statement of our intent as this body. So Gus, if you could clarify, do you have enough to go to your office and start formulating a statement of TAMZ's advocacy position and come back to us and we finalize something?
I'm sorry, that wasn't my motion.
the motion,
That wasn't
yeah.
my motion,
So
and nor
I'm
is
not
it
sure what
accepted
your
as a
motion
friendly
is then.
amendment.
I don't know what your motion is then.
So the motion is to ask, direct our TMZ staff, working with our lobbyists, to take the conversation today around the need to acknowledge that the gas tax is clearly not sustainable to fund ongoing road safety, road funding for infrastructure, and to go begin conversations with larger Central Coast partners to identify, I'm sorry, I should have written it down. The long day yesterday and my brain's tired, to identify other partners who share concerns about the ongoing funding for gas tax replacement, and to ensure that, to identify partners who want to work with us on this issue, ensuring that rural voices, the needs of our rural drivers in Monterey County are at the forefront of any solutions, and then bring back to us where we think that there might be coalition. And I'm so sorry. I am not able to articulate my thoughts in this moment. Give me just a second here. So give me just 1 second and I will say exactly what I'm thinking. That TAMZ should play a role in advocating on behalf of our residents by directing TAMZ staff to communicate and work with our regional partners on the issue of the gas tax replacement, identifying the alternatives that were provided today, to see about the opportunity to form a coalition that will ensure that the rural voices of our residents are prioritized in that process. And then to return back to us like to share, to report back on the interest for a coalition that would be able to advance those needs.
Okay, so
And I apologize for
No,
my
that's right.
rambling nature of my words in this moment, but
No, no.
that is the motion, and there's a second.
Through the chair. I understand where you're going for it. I just have a different approach. The approach I have is, I don't know that we're prepared to go out and start and create a work plan for TAMC that's gonna go on the road and try and find support. But when we're trying to advocate, I think TAMC should have a more certain position that's defined, written, that we see before we launch that. I think the outreach is great. I think we're just not ready for it.
Yeah, Chair, point of order. I think we have a motion on the floor. Can we move forward?
Yeah.
Yeah, on the
Want to speak to the
question.
motion?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to figure out through the chair, first of all, that was a lot in the motion. I support the concept. I know what we're trying to do, but it's hard for me to understand what we're sending our representative, whether it's TAMC or the lobbyists, out to do, if we're trying to act like we already picked a preferred alternative, when we have not voted on that here. We have not picked that here. And so advocacy, going to find our partners, all that's good stuff. But like I told you guys last time, what do we agree on here? And so I think we need to do that first, whether that's next month or as soon as you guys put it on the agenda, but to go out and take what we think the lobbyists heard, what TAMC heard, I don't know what they heard, because we all said a lot of different stuff. And so I would like for us, on the question, I'd like for us to speak with one voice about what you guys want to do. And I understand, protecting everyone, but going out and advocating for what? And so, thank you so much, Chair.
Sure. And just so I can clarify this, I get a sense that we're not at a point to actually advocate for either option. We're at a point where we're saying both the options and maybe further options are even viable. And so what we're asking the Gus and the team to do is take all of the options and work with the interested parties, come back to us with updates on where we stand. This is definitely not like happening this year from what we have gathered. So we do have some time to come back to the board with an update, and we can make a decision then whether we want to choose an option or both the options or multiple options. Please go ahead.
Chairman, thank you for articulating it that way, because it leaves it broad enough. And just as two main points: one, keeping all options on the table, the two primary ones, and maybe some alternatives that might get some wind as we talk. Number two is the coalition building. I agree that's needed. We at least start having conversations on a regional basis with our neighboring counties or Central Coast Alliance, and then statewide, right? The bigger picture. But the question was for you, Gus, and for Todd, is there any regional coalition conversations around this happening now, or statewide, that is not just people having conversations, but that they're really trying to get behind a position at this point in time?
Yeah, so through the chair, thank you for the question, Supervisor Alejo. So part of the conundrum is people don't know what else is out there as a solution. And I'll tell you, as your representative, as a legislative advocate, I don't do anything without direction from my clients. And so for me, like, I'd love to chat with Lauren at Caltrans or others, and we might have had preliminary conversations, but I'm not going to do a deeper dive unless the board says, yes, go investigate more, go find out more, so that you're better informed and you can land on a certain position that you want to pursue. So we've kind of mentioned it. Todd and Christina both participate on a regular basis with the Central Coast Coalition. So we've alluded to it, but we haven't done the deeper dive. And so today, what I'm hoping is that it's sort of an encouragement of, yes, I mean, we have all options on the table. Go see what sticks, come report back to us. And then if it checks the boxes, then we can be more vocal. And I just, one last comment that I want to make about this. It does take a coalition, but it takes someone to initiate the conversation, if there is a viable alternative. And this happened on SB1 with Santa Barbara County. It happened with Stanislaus County, which then snowballed to everybody else kind of agreeing to do it. And so it's like finding the cure for a disease, right? If it comes from one university, somebody vets it, and then it becomes widely accepted by the industry. And that's what we're trying to do, is just initiate and move the ball further down the road.
And Todd, have you had any conversation with our neighboring counties on this topic?
Yes, we have had conversations with our Central Coast partners. There's CalCog at the state level. We've had discussions with the self-help counties, but it's what I found, and one of the reasons why we wanted to bring this to the board was there has been a singular focus on road user charge up to this point. And I wanted to find out if the board was comfortable with that, or if they wanted to explore alternatives. And really that's what I was trying to get out of this discussion today.
That's good to hear from you as our executive director, because it aligns with what Mayor Labar was saying. I agree with our Director Smith as well, that it's too early. I'm not ready either, but if we have all options on the table, I'm comfortable with the motion because it allows us that flexibility, knowing that we have time to continue working on this and bring it back.
I'm not putting the motion forward,
Okay,
so it's super clear.
all right. Thank you. So the motion is going to go up on the board, so everybody is clear what we're actually voting on. Thank you. And while that's coming up, Gus, I know we've had a pretty long discussion here. Certainly recording is in place, so if there's anything that you can glean from this related to, I do think that you get a sense from this room at least that the VRF is kind of the direction that we are leaning on, and mainly because of equity concerns. So I think if the other road user charge can address that in some way or other, that could actually be work out. So anyway. Okay, so I'll just read this motion with you. Okay, so it's the motion to direct out TAMC staff to begin conversations with regional partners on replacement to the statewide gas tax that includes a VRF option that prioritizes the equity and affordability needs of rural residents. Did you want to also add to come back with updates or? Okay, all right, so that's the motion, and is there a second? Okay. We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? The motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so we actually have another agenda item here. It's receiving updates on the changes to the Brown Act as per Senate Bill 707. Christina Watson? Shane, go ahead.
Wow, y'all are jealous of me to have to follow that. Well, who has gotten an Senate Bill 707 briefing? I know that the supervisors. Okay, so I'm seeing some hands, but we have a few who haven't. All right. I'm going to try to make this quick, but it's a big bill. So, is this the clicker? Is it working now? It is Senate Bill 707, a bridge public. It's the Brown Act Modernization Act, BAMA. It runs from the mundane to the complex. There are now 10, count them, 10 teleconferencing options available to you. There are different implementation deadlines. For our purposes, all you need to know is it started January 1st, okay? Let's talk about things that apply to everybody. These are those. The biggest thing I want to highlight to you is that the traditional Brown Act, the one that Ralph Milton Brown came up with, that's still unchanged. So the classic, the traditional, whatever you want to call it, it's still there, it's still active. You'll see in your agendas, there's a hyperlink to the Brown Act now. That's for your benefit. We're required to give that to you, so enjoy. There's also stuff about Zoom bombing. Just the law clarifies that that's disruptive. I'm just gonna skirt right on to our next major change, which is there's now an ADA teleconferencing option. This is something for people with disabilities. There used to be an AG's opinion out there that you as legislative body members
could not receive as a reasonable accommodation teleconferencing. Last year, the Lieutenant Governor asked the AG to reconsider that. The AG did and found that in fact, that's not the case any longer. The legislature took initiative and said, hey, we're going to give it to you. It's going to be on us to identify if members of the legislative body has a disability, and we're going to offer it to you. The people who are using teleconference are counted as in room for purposes of voting as well as quorum. They have to use some type of audio visual technology, and they have to announce that people over the age of 18 are in the room, but those are the really only two requirements under the ADA. Okay, this is a big lift, this part of the law, and that is eligible legislative bodies. Eligible legislative bodies, it sounds very similar to another big part of this statute, which is eligible subsidiary bodies. I find that even as I explain that to staff, people will still confuse the two. Why am I bringing that up? Because it is confusing. What's really important for you to know, TAMC members, is that it doesn't apply to you. Okay? So you're going to hear people talking about how cumbersome SB 707, all these requirements, it doesn't apply to you. For now, I should qualify that. CSAC announced that they are, the Senator, I believe it's Senator Ortega, who drafted this bill, had originally contemplated everybody, all Brown Act bodies, that would be inclusive of us. But they kind of whittled it down. And just for your edification, I've included the definitions, but I didn't go into a lot of detail because it doesn't affect us. I do want you to know, though, what others are going to be complaining about. It's mandatory Zoom for the public. It's translating materials and promote public participation. I do want to actually, so who does this affect? It's the city of Salinas, the county of Monterey, and possibly the city of Seaside. I don't know. That last one for sure. But when I say complain, there are requirements, but thankfully I can speak for the county of Monterey, our clerk of the board, we're basically compliant already. So it's not a huge ask for people who already have the infrastructure in place, but it will be harder if smaller entities such as ourselves are required to do it. Okay, and now for the actual lion's share of the presentation, I'm going to take us down the road of those teleconferencing options. I already told you we have the traditional Brown Act, right? Tried and true. We have the new ADA. Now we have all the others. So they fall under this statutory provision, and it's 54953.8. I want to draw your attention to this chart and why I created it the way that I did. First of all, there's this root statute up here. That statute has its own requirements, and they trickle down to all these other code provisions. So the requirements are cumulative. So your first question is, go over here, do you fall into one of these? Okay, I fall into one of these, I read the statute, I understand what the requirements are, but then I also have to go back up to that root statute. So you always have to consult with two statutes if it's not the ADA teleconference or it's not traditional Brown Act. Okay. So this is what all of those 7 require. Real-time two-way communications. I'm just going to abbreviate that. That's kind of an elaborate, I'm going to simplify it by saying it's Zoom. It can be other things that are Zoom-like, but there's also webcasting and other things. We're not going to use that here at TAMC, so I'm not going to go too further into it. The communications have to, the link has to be in the agenda. Internet disruptions, this was a big deal for AB 2449, right? We are here to conduct the people's business. We've been conducting the people's business as long as there's been a state, longer. And now that we have Zoom, if we use teleconference, if you use any of these and our internet here goes out, we can't conduct the people's business. It stops, full stop. And that's an issue, I think. But maybe a trade-off worth having. Okay, there have been some public bodies that were conditioning public comment on whether they submitted a comment before the meeting. The legislature did not like that. They said, don't do that. I don't understand that we've been doing that, so I think that we're okay. Members' names in the minutes, so the members' names has to appear in the minutes. We're not agendizing locations under any of these. But we are going to, in the minutes after you teleconference, we're going to say Shane Strong appeared under this statute. Okay? Reasonable accommodation procedure. The Brown Act can be understood in three different parts. It relates to your requirements. You're a legislative body member, right? And then there's members of the public, they have their own rights, and then there's staff, okay? So what this reasonable accommodation procedure is saying is that this legislative body has to have a reasonable accommodation procedure, nothing in writing, just if somebody needs accommodations, that we work with them. And we should be accommodating whenever possible. And that's always been the requirement. It's just now added into the statute. You also have to notice that people over the age of 18 are at your location. So these requirements fall into all 7 of those that we were talking about, but we're not going to talk about all 7 because several of them do not apply to you. So the next one is state of emergency. State of emergency, this is what you may remember as AB 361. This is what we did during COVID. We have to redeclare a state of emergency every 45 days. The reason why AB 361 went away was because it was only applicable during a state declared state of emergency. So once the governor said COVID is over, even though COVID might not have been over in your county, we didn't have a recourse. They've changed the law. They said, hey, local governments can declare a state of emergency. That is within your power. And then you could teleconference. Hopefully we'll never use it, right? Knock on wood. But moving on to the next one, we're going to talk about just cause. This isn't, it has the same name, but it's a little different than what you've been trained on. Just cause has changed a little bit. We still require quorum in one physical location, which is kind of a difficult thing for some bodies. We have to make a report, so that's the same, right? We report, hey, I need just cause. Two-way communication remains the same. The limitations on how many times you can use it per year is a little bit different. It's now, there used to be a disagreement between the calendar year and the last time you used it, so it was a very complicated formula to track whether you've reached your limit. They've just said you get X amount in the calendar year. It's much easier to track. We now also have to say what the just cause was in the minutes. Again, not in the agenda. So you could use just cause at the day of the meeting, as long as we have a Zoom. And then you have to say, hey, I need just cause. I have a contagious illness. Okay, and so for example, and then the minutes we say Shane Strong, just cause, contagious illness, boom. No location in the agenda. I put that on each of those because it's important. I want you to understand. The reason why we have so many teleconferencing options is because a lot of lobbyists, in my opinion, went to Sacramento to get rid of the agendize your location and hold it open to the public. And instead of getting rid of that, they've given us 9 new options. So the next one, this is the marquee. This is the one that if you've been listening to the news, this is the one that you should be paying attention to. This is for eligible subsidiary bodies. So you are the legislative body. You also have subordinate legislative bodies like committees and other things. They have to follow the Brown Act. Well, what this is saying is if you're truly a committee, meaning that number 1, you're a Brown Act body. Number 2, you have no final decisions and you make only recommendations exclusively, like a committee should, then you can use this teleconferencing regimen. There's a definition, boom. There's an exception, boom. An important point I want to make here is that there was a question about whether the Measure X committee or the Oversight Committee would be excluded as an eligible subsidiary body. It is my opinion that, in fact, they are not excluded. So basically, all of our committees will qualify as eligible subsidiary bodies. What does that mean? It means that they can use teleconference. There has to be one physical location, but none of the legislative body members actually have to appear. So we just have a staff member in room. Everyone else can teleconference in, if you can imagine. Those who are teleconferencing in, they have to make themselves visible and, well, they have to use cameras and turn their audio on. Those are really the only 2 requirements, but there is what I call the Minuteman missile launch, right? If you put in your mind the Minuteman missile launch, there are 2 keys. So in this process too, there are 2 keys. You hold the first key. You're the parent legislative body. You can say, go my eligible subsidiary bodies, teleconference. But you have to have a resolution. I'm going to be preparing one for our next meeting. which, you know, we can go into maybe more robust conversation and won't be at the end of the day. We can decide whether to turn the key. The thing about it is that we're going to have to bring that back to you every 6 months. Kind of a bummer, but that's how it was designed. And I think that's going to be ironed out as time goes on and people become more comfortable with it. The second key is turned by the eligible subsidiary body. So in this example, the Measure X committee, they can say, hey, we don't want to. You know, we only meet 4 times a year. We like each other's company. We think that we're more productive this way. Okay, that's fine. You know, they don't have to do it. It's really at their prerogative. I didn't put it on here, but I do want to let you know that it's at your prerogative and at your pleasure. So if a committee is acting funny, you don't like the way that they're conducting themselves over teleconference, you want to rein it in, you can tell them you're done. You can just knock it off at any time for any reason without consequence. Again, no location in the agenda. There's some funny rules, I'll call them funny rules about eligible subsidiary bodies. First of all, elected officials who are appointed in their official capacity cannot use that rule, which might affect you. I think that it definitely affects the supervisors because the supervisors that sit on this body sit there by designation of their office. But I don't think that the cities appoint each of our municipal representatives and it doesn't have to be an elected. What about our alternates? Probably the same thing would apply. So only the supervisors might be affected. It's kind of a strange exception. And with that, you know, if an elected official is on an eligible subsidiary body, I just want you to imagine a just cause. So remember with just cause, we have to have quorum in one location, but if it's an eligible subsidiary body, literally no one can show up. Except for the elected, they have to show up to the meeting. So how could they possibly ever use just cause? So there's an interplay with all these teleconferences and options, and one can eat the other. And it's really confusing. Anyway. And then yada, yada. I don't want to go into too much detail. This is the last slide, so you're almost done. Almost done, I promise. Okay, so the last one is a multiple jurisdictional body. If you fall into one of these definitions, there are 2 definitions generally, you can use this teleconference. Is my opinion that TAMC qualifies as a multiple jurisdictional body. Hooray, do we want to use it? I will bring a resolution at our next meeting and we can discuss it in more detail. But generally the requirements are as follows: adopt a resolution at a regular meeting. There has to be quorum in physical locations within the jurisdiction, which would be, of course, the County of Monterey, right? That shouldn't be a heavy lift. Compensated members appear in physical location. I think that you all are, what do you call it? Not compensated, yes, uncompensated. Yeah, so thank you for your patience and your service. So not a problem here. Agenda identifies who appears remotely. They have to use Zoom. Okay, and then there's the 20-mile rule. So this is the last goofy rule that I'm going to be reciting to you. But basically, say that we meet here and we do all of this. There will come around us a 20-mile radius from this location, and none of you can teleconference under this rule using this. You could still use maybe traditional Brown Act or other things. What is 20 miles from here? It's about Greenfield. It's you know, it depends. But then talking about other consequences, if somebody does have a remote location like Supervisor Alejo's office, that's what, 5 miles down the road maybe? That creates a second 20-mile radius that we'll have to track. And if somebody is, you know, zooming in from Greenfield or City of King, another radius. Lots of fun, never ends. Use limits, we have 257 for the year and no location on the agenda. I know it's a lot. I appreciate your patience. I know that you've probably heard this a few times already. Something they taught us at law school is repetition is good. Repetition is good. Good is repetition. And that's why I remember that rule. So thank you for your patience. If you have questions, you can reach out to me, but I'm happy also to answer questions now, Chair.
Thank you, Shane. Noting the robust discussion earlier, anybody have any questions? Yes. Yeah, can you circulate the slides to everyone?
Thank you, Eloise.
Okay,
yes.
great.
If
Was there another question?
If a board member receives a stipend, is that considered compensated?
It depends what you mean by stipend. So I think that the answer is yes, but if you're getting reimbursed for miles traveled, I think the answer is no. So it really depends on how the compensation is happening.
MST does both. You get
Yeah.
flat fee plus mileage.
Yeah, so you ask your counsel, they'll give you, and maybe they'll even tell you something different than I tell you, so, you know.
I don't doubt it.
All right. Any, Chair, anything else?
Okay, seems like there's no other questions and there's no public comment, right? So this is a receive update. Thank you, Shane. We'll proceed on to the next item.
Thank you.
And the next item is receiving reports from transportation providers. Caltrans is first. Paul?
Greetings, everyone. My name is Paul Valadale. I'm here on behalf of our director, Scott Eads, to represent District 5. I have a few announcements to cover for our setting here. Governor Newsom announced on January 14th the reopening of Highway 1 Big Sur. I'm sure the reopening portion of Highway 1 was closed by Regent Slide and was open on January 14th. This was a long haul. It was nearly 3 years. We had understood last summer that there was a potential to open up as early as late March, but weather permitting, because we're working out in nature and construction workers safety wise and the engineers out in the field, we were able to make some gains and be able to open it up to the public on the 14th. So we recognize the value of the Big Sur Coast, not just to this region and Monterey County, but also to the state and the nation and really the world. So we're very grateful for that. I'd like to spend most of my update on the State Route 68 Adaptive Traffic Signal Control Pilot Project update. Since the board voted in March of 25 to pursue a 5-year adaptive traffic signal control, allow me as a Caltrans employee to use an acronym, ATSC pilot project on State Route 68, District 5, in partnership with TAMC staff, has been working to implement the project as efficiently as possible. The district is excited to take a lead role in implementing the innovative technology as a pilot project. As of today, all traffic signal controllers have been updated with a new software compatible with MyoVision adaptive technology. MyoVision is one of the makers of both the hardware and software of this technology. This effort required special approvals from Caltrans, since these are state-operated intersections along 68, and more importantly, required the reprogramming of every timing parameter at all 9 intersections. We are happy to report that all traffic signal controllers were tested and deployed and are currently in operation. All equipment for the pilot project has been installed. MyoVision, our engineers consulted with MyoVision, verified all controllers are communicating, and the corridor is now ready to begin data collection and calibration of this adaptive control. This process has been quoted by MyoVision and vetted by our engineers that it'll take approximately 3 months to perform data collection and calibration, which means that the earliest start of the actual pilot period is slated to begin at the beginning of May. During this interim period between installation of the full adaptive operation, Caltrans will be collaborating very closely with MyoVision and TAMC staff on optimizing settings and configuration of this new system. Once the adaptive technology is enabled, the team will begin observing and evaluating the equipment. Throughout the project life, Caltrans and TAMC will evaluate the performance metrics from an operational and safety standpoint at key milestone dates that we all agree to. We look forward to returning to this board this spring when we can share our insights on the project implementation, with the intention of periodically sharing analysis reports on the pilot with TAMC staff and the board throughout the lifetime of the pilot project. And that's my update. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Do you have any questions? Go ahead.
So my understanding is that the real data is going to be collected. Understanding is the real data is going to be collected for analysis starting in May. Before that is calibration and data collection to calibrate. So if we start in May to get the data that will be analyzed for understanding whether we need roundabouts or not, how many months will you need after May?
Oh, sorry. I thought that was a semicolon, not a period or question. So it's a 5-year pilot. We have a schedule where, here, I'm referring my notes. There is evaluation that goes through the entire 5 years, but we have a more detailed schedule shared by our traffic engineers that I can share with this board, but it covers model setup and evaluation that occurs or has occurred now. We're doing the data collection now through the end of April, so that calibration and data collection through the end of April. And beginning in May, we can look at full-time operation and monitoring, adaptive full system training, and before and after analysis. That'll take us well into 2026. The duration, the reason why it's 5 years is depends on what we see, how the corridor behaves, how each of the 9 intersections adapt, if you will, to this ATSC. So we have up until 5 years. We're certainly hoping not to take all 5 years. So I don't have a conclusive answer to that, just so that, because we just don't know what we're going to see at that spring check-in.
Do you think it'll be hard for Caltrans and TAMC to keep the board updated on how much money we're spending on roundabouts before we know if AI is the silver bullet, precluding the need for roundabouts?
I would say no, so long as we maintain the good coordination and communication that we have amongst our agencies.
So do we keep spending money on roundabouts because they're a viable option and we don't want to lose grant cycles in the future before we know if AI is going to work?
These are the conversations that our agencies are having continuously. So we're trying to spin both plates at the same time, right? We're very proactive about this ATSC corridor, and we're eager to see the results starting in May. At the same time, we're significantly, just in the last several weeks, we're significantly reducing our engineers' effort on the corridor of roundabouts, production of plan specs and estimate, so that there's this focus on the ATSC corridor, keeping those 2 plates spinning. So we're trying to do both at the same time. Obviously, we're not going to go all full bore on the corridor of roundabouts because we have this very important ATSC pilot that we're all hopeful can produce results. We just collectively don't know yet. So to answer your question, more in the gray, if you will, is scaling back roundabout design production significantly. We're targeting around half of our effort, and working with MyoVision and more so with TAMC on this ATSC corridor.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Bar.
And you pretty much answered the question I was going to ask, so I just want to reiterate, one, appreciate the coordination and collaboration with TAMC to make this happen. It's great to know that they're in place. And yes, I do believe getting that data from initial setup and then through the iterations as it's optimized will be very good for not only the board, but as the public, so they can see the tweaks. I just don't want to see anyone come back and say, oh, we don't know what happened and now it's not shown, it doesn't work. So the fact that you offered that up right off the bat, that information, perfect, that's awesome.
This will only work through continued collaboration, and that's the main goal. Because we all want to collectively see the results at the same time and to deliberate those results together.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Me too.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Any other questions? If not, thank you. And I would say when we come back in the spring, you mentioned some key milestone dates. I think hopefully the spring report will contain those key milestone dates, correct?
I'll work with staff to make sure it does. But yes, we're with the data collection and collaboration taking all the way through April, we're hoping to see results as early as May. But we'll work with Todd and team at TAMC staff to find an optimal time to check in with this board that's worthwhile and meaningful for your time.
Appreciate it. Thank you. We'll move on to the next provider. Do we have anybody from the airport? Mr. Miller?
I saw Dino pick earlier. Okay, he's left.
Okay, so we've moved past noon, I think, so we're seeing some drop offs here. Next one is MST, Mr. Sidoric.
Yes, real quickly, MST board received an update at our last meeting, the completion of our biannual rider survey, where we survey over 600 passengers. That gives us 90% certainty, plus or minus 5%. And 92% of our riders are happy, rate MST overall good or excellent, and 92% rate our drivers' safety as good or excellent. So we're happy to hear that information. We've received 13 new 100% zero emission battery electric buses in the past month. That brings our total fleet to 17 battery electric buses. That's 20% of our fleet now. The remaining 80% of our heavy duty fleet is 100% renewable biofuel. So we don't use fossil fuel in any of our vehicles and haven't for quite some time. And then lastly, our board approved the procurement of 3-position bike racks for our entire fleet. So that increases from 2-position to 3-position. And the new bike racks will have the ability to carry the higher weight and wider tire frames of the battery electric bicycles to carry on our buses. Remember, they are for bicycles. So if it doesn't have pedals, it's not a bicycle. It's an electric motorcycle. So bicycles, we'll have more of those on our buses. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing those updates. Looks like great, all of them. Any questions or comments? If not, we're moving on to the next provider. Embard, do we have Richard or anybody from Embard here? Yes,
Yeah, good
please
morning.
go ahead.
Yeah, Dave Frisbee with Embard. Yeah, just a few program updates that we have. Electric Vehicle Incentive Program. We had set aside $500,000 to provide incentives for residents in the 3 counties to purchase an electric vehicle, $1,500 for a zero emission vehicle, and double that for low income applicants. We've gone through all the funding since July, and all the program funds have been obligated. So that program is now just about closed. Our diesel engine and equipment replacement program, which is a replacement program for old tractors for new cleaner burning tractors. The old tractor gets destroyed, and then we'll assist with up to 50% of the price of a new tractor. That program, the application period is open. Be running through the next month. So we're taking applications to get more of these tractors destroyed and new tractors, cleaner burning tractors out there. And then a brand new program that we're launching next week is our utility terrain vehicle replacement program. These are vehicles that are used on farms. They're golf cart sized, less than 40 horsepower, usually powered by gasoline or diesel. The program is going to destroy the old UTVs and replace them with all electric models. So up to $13,500 per vehicle. So keep an eye out for those programs. If you have any questions or if you want to direct people to our website, we'll have more information there. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Frisbee. Any questions or comments? I see it's pretty bright out there and reminds me that it's been 3 hours since I've seen the sun. So we'll go to the next item, which is number 10, reports and meetings attended by board members at TAMC. Any updates here?
There's none that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. Item number 11 is the executive director's report. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just have one item, and that's a correction. When Mayor Delgado asked me at the December meeting whether there was money being spent on the roundabout design, the roundabout projects on Highway 68, I misunderstood this question to be based on the STIP funding that the board approved at that meeting. And the question that I didn't answer correctly was, is there money being spent on the roundabout project right now while we're waiting for the adaptive signals to be implemented and seeing the results of those? And the correct answer to that is that yes, there is money being spent. Caltrans team is working on the design, and there is a little bit of right-of-way work being done. And we discussed this with Caltrans and asked them to reduce their time as much as possible as we wait for the adaptive signals to come in and be able to evaluate them. So they are continuing to spend money on the 3 roundabouts that are part of the first phase of the overall corridor. And the reason for that is if we are to have a chance to apply for the next round of SB1 funds, we need to make some deadlines on developing the project. So it is that balance. Paul mentioned spinning plates. So we asked them to reduce the amount of spend as much as possible, but continue in order to be able to meet that grant application deadline. And as we have more information on the adaptive signals and we can talk more about the cost benefit of the adaptive signals versus the roundabouts, we'll bring that to the board for further discussion. So I just want to make that clarification. Thank you.
And thank you, Todd. Was there anything else or was that it?
That was it.
Okay, any questions? If not, the item number 12 is announcements or from TAMC members on matters they wish to put on future transportation agency agendas. Do you have any? Yes, go ahead.
Yes, Chair. So last month we brought up a question regarding the amount of people that are getting hit, pedestrians, people on scooters, and framed it in the appropriate way as it's not just cars hitting people, but there's this general distraction that's going on. And Mayor Donahue kind of phrased it very well. It's distracted mobility. Since then, TAMC had said they're developing this campaign, advertising campaign for a different area. But after that conversation with the lead of Mayor Donahue, and the other 4 cities in South County all signed on to a letter regarding that. And our meeting for the South County mayors and managers just the other day, it came to light that the youth council in Salinas and the youth council in Soledad actually took up the lead to start promoting more awareness regarding, people are got to be more aware of what they're doing. That conversation led to a request, and this is one that would happen within all of our communities. And that request is for the next agenda for our consideration would be to identify where money would come from and the allocation of up to $1,000 per youth council or youth organization, which within each city that could be used to, one, spread the word through their networks about the importance of being aware of your surroundings, whether you're on a scooter, whether you're walking, whether you're biking, or whether you're driving, and also look at opportunities where they can on their schools have presentations to bring more awareness. This is something I think ties directly into the safe routes. So school money that we've spent recently, as additionally to all the ATP projects within all of our communities. So this would be more of a youth-led educational campaign. And that's what we're asking for consideration on the next agenda. So to be clear, up to $1,000 per city if they have a youth council for their youth council, or if they have an active youth organization for that active youth organization. I don't know how that would work for the county reps. I did not even think about that, sorry.
Eric, at the
Thank you.
appropriate time, if I could.
Yeah.
No, and I would just add, and I also want to kudos to Greenfield because I know their youth council. It's been interesting since this brought up at the last meeting here. This seems to have kind of took, and the youth councils in particular liked it. I had a chance to talk to the president of KSBW yesterday. I think she's kind of intrigued by it. And one of the things she said, because they did follow up our press briefing and we started a PSA campaign in Salinas, she expressed, she was interested in it and said, I would hope it would be ongoing. And I said, I think it's certainly the intention of all of us. And then I happened to, without committing, I said, and organizations like TAMC have safe routes and do a really good job at marketing. And then the other thing I would just throw in at our council meeting last night, and we're having the roundabout conversation in Salinas, and we very cleverly decided to put all our roundabouts in high traveled locations by schools, which have people concerned. So that whole issue of mobility and moving around and being educated, I think it's a nice opportunity to educate folks, but more importantly, it's probably a necessity. And it seems like this just has kind of caught folks' imagination a little bit, and I think it's a good opportunity for TAMC.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Did you have something? Okay. I was going to ask Todd, first of all, I know like safe routes to school is one thing, but I also know we partner with organizations like Ecology Action. Do all of these organizations play a role along with the youth councils here? And that's number one. And number two, do you think we have enough information here, or can the staff work with the information presented here to bring something to the board next agenda meeting?
We have a range of partners on our projects, including Ecology Action and the county. So that does, and we all interact. We are scheduled to have an item on our Vision Zero, our Safe Route to School, and our Safe Streets for All programs next month. We can incorporate maybe something like Mayor Labar suggested. We could talk about that as well as part of the item. But I love the fact that you're all talking about this, and we look forward to sharing what we're already doing and getting direction on what we do in the future.
Thank you, Todd. And I would just say that like in cases where there are no youth councils, we might want to think about alternatives too. So I'll go ahead, Ms. Velasquez.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to share with our youth council, I think it's also important as we're looking at the adults were having this discussion, the youth were having their discussion as well, which is really exciting to see. But for our Soledad Youth Council, they launched they're calling it Comprehensive Street Safety Initiative that was launched in October of 2025. And I know that they're doing a lot. They've already met with a lot of our local stakeholders with our police department to really analyze their campaign and what they want to do at the local level. They're including media content, educational videos. So they have a whole comprehensive plan. And so when the discussion came with our youth council is we also have to make sure that we're connecting our youth council, what they're doing to TAMC to ensure that we are working cohesively on this, because our youth councils are really active, already doing some of the work that we've already addressed in our, ATPs and our Safe Routes to School. And how do we make sure that they're at the table and their voices are heard, and we're putting part of the engagement conversations that are part of all of these different projects that we're providing funding for. I know that I've seen a lot of community engagement, and a lot of the funding that we're providing is how do we ensure that that's also being included with our councils.
Excuse me, and thank you for sharing that. Todd, any further comments? Okay, we're good. Any other thoughts on this matter?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Pretty quickly. I just want to make sure that the conversation, Todd, our executive director mentioned about, it may be able to be included in the other conversation. I think it should be included. That's what we're asking for, a direct conversation, because it's important. The reason why I raised my hand is because I'm going to make the same point is not trying to give TAMC more work, but definitely how do we coordinate the excellent work you guys are doing in Safe Route to Schools and share that with those youth and their groups. In a sense, we're saying the same thing, and in a sense, they're taking this so-called adult language about safety and putting it into their own words. So not come in as a Bigfoot, but definitely link TAMC's expertise on reducing, accidents and just working together. And I know right now we don't have a youth council, but I think we can definitely find a group to take $1,000 and of course match them and do more. But I would like my group to be able to get the true information about how to reduce it and put in their own words. So a great idea.
It could
Yeah.
be very, very clear. We would like the agenda item to ask for up to $1,000 for the year. And for that to go to either the youth council or an active youth organization, which could be simply at the high school level, their local government or interact. That could be another type of club. Every city is going to have that ability. And to, as Mayor Velasquez said, to coordinate. So that would be the ask, because they are actually getting to people that we are not getting to. And it is a completely different line of education and awareness that they can access. So that is what we're asking for to be in the motion, or the staff report.
Thank you. I heard it. I just realized that this is not an agenda item for today, so I was trying not to jump into the emotion,
Okay.
agenda item, all those things. We are hearing it, and we'll be bringing back an item next month that reflects it.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Go ahead. Yes, so we finished the discussion on this, the youth council item. Do you have another, please go ahead.
Most specifically, talk about the location language, but just giving it back to make sure that there is clarity on the process and transparency and really getting record board. I know that we already had some policy we gave come back in March, for some of the funding, policies regarding funding and March, or
Thank you.
One small item.
Yes.
I've talked to Todd about this a couple of times, but I think it would be good either on a consent agenda or some other way for us to get a memo explaining the cost allocations, cost expenditures on roundabouts and AI and the timing when they're planned, when they've already happened, so that we can see at one glance and talk to the public who have concerns. You know, this is the money we're spending, this is the money we're not spending. The reason we're spending the money on RAs now is because we want to be in place for the SB1 grant cycle. So we may be spending a few million that we won't end up using if we don't do roundabouts, but it's better to spend it now instead of losing 80 million on some grant in the future because we didn't spend a few million now. That kind of thinking, I think it'd be good for our board to be clear on the funding behind those two alternatives.
Got it. And Todd, hopefully you've got that too. So we're going to come back with a memo or an item which describes that. Any other future agenda items to be considered? Okay, so with that, then I'll close item number 12. We do have a closed session, so we're going to stay here and wrap that up. It's for public employee performance evaluation. I'm going to open it up for public comment to see if there's any public comment for the closed session matter. No hands are raised. With that, we'll go into closed session. Thank you.
We gotta start bringing three things of coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah, just figure one per hour. So then we start with three.
Yeah.
We're here adjourned with a quorum. There's nothing to report out of closed session, and therefore we may adjourn at the chair's direction.
Thank you. The meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everyone.